Hello, good evening. I call the May 3rd, 2022 City Council regular meeting to order. City Clerk Ben Lane, please conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor David Ortega.
Present.
Vice Mayor Tamika Pudi.
Here.
Council members Tom Durham.
Present.
Betty Janik.
Here.
Kathy Littlefield.
Present.
Linda Milhaven.
Here.
And Solange Whitehead.
Here.
City Manager Jim Thompson.
Here.
City Attorney Sherry Scott.
Here.
City Treasurer Sonia Andrews.
Here.
City Auditor Sharon Walker.
Here.
And the clerk is present. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. We have police officers Anthony Wells and Dustin Patrick, as well as firefighter Austin Hendricks, should anyone need assistance. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilwoman Littlefield. Looks like we have some distinguished visitors here as well, and I would, I'll go into my mayor's report right now, and then do the acknowledgments. So we continue to keep the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian nation, in the forefront of our thoughts. So let's pause in silence as we hope and for their freedom and their fight for their nation. Thank you. Well, the McCormick Stillman Railroad Park concert series is back. The park successfully had their first concert this past Sunday, and there will be concerts every Sunday in May. They start at 7:30 to 9 p.m. Also, this is Teacher Appreciation Week. And I know that we all think of a teacher, mentor, someone significant at whatever level we were in school. We happen to have 3 teachers in our family, so of course it's always a positive thing to support education and the teachers. I do see some red shirts out there, and if you could just tell us your name or come up forward just to say hi. Will you please? Yeah, just come on up and say hi. Yeah, just we noticed the Pledge of Allegiance was pretty enthusiastic, so it's nice to have you here, and perhaps the adult and others could just say hello to us. The microphone's right here at the podium. Yay, thank you. I see Navajo, of course. That's wonderful. The kids from Navajo, they just reopened the Navajo school, and of course our principal's here and several family members. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us tonight. My name is Matt Patzloff, and I'm the principal of Navajo Elementary School.
Hello, my name is Abby Mullen, and I'm the co-president for the Navajo Student Council.
Good.
I'm Jonathan DiDomenico, and I'm also the co-president for Navajo Student Council.
I'm Sonia Hunsley, and I'm the scribe for the Navajo Student Council.
I'm Caleb Hose, and I'm the treasurer at Navajo Elementary.
I'm Justin Monroe. I am the vice president for Navajo Elementary.
These are 5 of my 6 student council officers. I'm Stacy Newharth. I teach 4th grade at Navajo, and I'm their advisor for student council.
I'm Easton Mullen, proud parent of Abby Mullen, one of the co-presidents of the, I'm in the Dad's Club and volunteer from time to time for the school. Thanks.
Good.
I'm Ray Duran, also in the Dad's Club. I have students that are not here, but yeah, help build the float and other volunteer work.
Thank you very much, and let's hear it for Navajo. There was a catastrophic fire at Navajo Elementary, and the rebuild happened, and it's amazing. The population has grown, and all the enthusiasm. I was there as well when the school board members cut the ribbon again. So thank you very much. We'll move on with the next part of our program, which is the Prada del Sol Parade award presentation. We have the committee members here, and to make the presentation includes Dr. Joe Deca, other members in attendance, Jose Leon, and Tim Garvin. So why don't you tell us about the program?
All right, well, it's my great pleasure and honor to be here to speak about the Prada del Sol, which was a fantastic event that we had on February 5th. It was extremely well attended, and we couldn't be happier. My name is Joe Deca. I'm a Scottsdale Charo and also on the Prada committee, and we were very pleased with how it turned out. So thank you. This couldn't have been done without the help of the city. So a great thanks to all of you up there. There's a lot of familiar faces on this slide, and we're very indebted and grateful to the city, and we're honored to be a part of putting this on. The Prada del Sol committee, which is the community members, they've been doing this for years and years and years, and as the Charos came in, we had no idea what the parade was about, what we were doing, and we leaned on this list of folks very, very heavily. And it includes the Cozy Old family, who are Entertainment Solutions, who kind of did the logistics of the parade and were just instrumental. Wendy Springborn, Dennis, the Chipettis, Chrissy Lyman, Lonnie Gibson, who's here. Where's Lonnie? Thank you, Lonnie. Gary Cooper, Shelley Cooper, Tony Gardella, Michelle Irvin, Rachel Smetana, who the mayor knows well, and a host of others. And this was a true banding together of these folks to put on a great event. Our theme was back in the saddle, and it was, I mean, way beyond that. We had the heaviest attendance ever for a Prada del Sol, well over 35,000 folks. We had close to 100 entries in the parade, which was heavily Western themed. We are the West's most Western parade, and it was one of the oldest events in Scottsdale, so we're really happy that it turned out the way it did. Costs, as in everything, we were talking just back in the back about costs overrunning for builders and contractors everywhere, and the same held for Prada. We ran the financials, did a good job of accounting, and the cost for this year was 3 to 4 times more than 2 years ago. But thankfully, through the efforts of our community, we were able to raise $125,000 in addition to what the city so graciously provided, and that allowed us to break even on the event. The marketing was fantastic. We had a small amount in paid advertising, and the marketing partners that we worked with came through in strides. It was almost $800,000 in free marketing, which led to almost 11.3 million impressions on social media and different forms of print and video. There were many mentions of City of Scottsdale as a host sponsor, lots of print articles and mentions on social media, and there was a lot of buzz about the event leading into it, which led to our huge attendance. And this is the best part. So you met the students and parents from Navajo Elementary as well as the principal. They won the best school entry. They had an amazing entry with over 100 folks in their little section with the float that was built. It was incredible, and they were a crowd favorite. So thank you guys for... Y'all should be really proud. Navajo holds a special place in my heart because I was their school rep last year. The best City of Scottsdale entry was Operation Fix It. We have Michelle Holmes here, who is representing them, so did an amazing job. The best native entry was the Apache Riders, and these guys were just awesome on their horses, and you know they did the full deal. The best Hispanic entry, the Cuadra Espinosa, they were the prancing horses. They're always a crowd favorite, and they're amazing riders. Best Western vehicle was the Marshall's Posse. They were in full force for sure, and they were a crowd pleaser for sure. Most patriotic, Sons of the American Revolution. Crowd favorite was the Olin Yalitzi Dancers. They have more energy than I think anybody I've ever seen in my life. They danced the whole way, and it was in that, and it was hot, and they did amazing. It was awesome. The We've Got Spirit was the little mini horses that were running around. They had one that was pulling a cart that said back in the saddle, and that was our theme of the parade. The best youth was the 4-H Cloggers entry. The first time was the transplant community. They had a good contingent there and were well represented. The hometown favorite, Laguna. Most original was if you were at the parade, you saw one parade with all the paddle boards going by and all that pulled behind Jeeps, and that was the Riverboard Sports entry. The judge's choice was the Feria de Caballos, and the best overall was the Charros, so we were happy to win that, and I was lucky enough to ride in the parade with these guys. Here's just some pictures from the parade. This one on the left is Jose Leon, who was the Prada boss for last year. He was the chairman, and I'm lucky that I was selected to be that for next year. So I'm hopeful that next year's report is as glowing as this one. I'm hopeful that it turns out that way. And then there's a few more pictures here going through, just showing the good times that we had and how successful the parade was. It was a beautiful day. The weather could not have been better. The bands looked amazing. The floats looked amazing. A big thanks to Oliver Smith Jewelers. They were our title sponsor, and they came through in a big way, and they had a big presence at the parade. So overall, it was a fantastic event that's been 67 years going strong, and we'd like to keep it continuing with the support of the city and all the community members. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, hold on, Dennis. Let's get a picture with Navajo up in front, and someone's got a camera, I'm sure. Come on, kids. Well, at this point, we'll continue with our agenda, which is public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for Scottsdale citizens to come forward on any non-agendized item that is within the council's jurisdiction. No official council action can be taken on something which is not on the agenda. And just a reminder, if you did want to speak to an item, of course, you can look at the item number on our agenda. So I do have one speaker. It's Thomas Laporte with Save the Trees organization.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mayor and Council people, my name's Tom Laporte. I live at 18877 North 98th Street. I'm here tonight to give you an update on the Sisu tree situation in the Silverleaf Arcadia neighborhood because I know you've all been excited to hear about this. On August 19th of 2021, the DRB voted unanimously to deny the DC Ranch HOA's request to destroy 670 of the approximately 1,000 Sisu trees in Arcadia. At the conclusion of that meeting, Councilwoman Littlefield strongly encouraged the HOA to engage in discussions with the Arcadia residents in an attempt to achieve a negotiated settlement regarding the trees. Within days of the DRB decision, the residents reached out to the HOA with a formal 5-point proposal as an attempt to open a dialogue. The overture was rejected, as have been at least 4 additional requests by residents of the neighborhood. Instead, within weeks of losing to the DRB, the board passed a resolution allowing individual residents to remove the sisu trees with HOA approval. This is a clear violation of the community CC&Rs that prohibits residents from even touching the trees, as the HOA assumes all responsibility to maintain and water the trees. Shortly after that resolution, they passed another resolution that incentivized residents to remove the sisu trees by reimbursing owners for the cost of that. This is a blatant attempt to circumvent the DRB ruling and thumb their nose at the city. It's kind of like the hitman couldn't make the hit himself, so he paid somebody to do it. And that's what's going on in Arcadia right now. They're paying the residents to remove the trees because the city would not allow them to do it. In the recent DC Ranch Board election, controlled by approximately 36 NVMs in the community of approximately 10,000 people, Arcadia was denied representation on the board. Shortly after that election, we reached out to the new board president with a new proposal, offering to take on all future liabilities of the streets of the street trees if the HOA would allow us to use artificial turf in our front yards. This was important because for years the HOA has told us that if we accepted liability for the trees, they would allow us to keep them. The president said he would take it under consideration, but he has not gotten back to us. In the meantime, 5 residents have accepted the HOA's bribe and removed the sisu trees. This has put huge holes in the neighborhood shade canopy and will surely damage the unique microclimate we enjoy. Where neighborhood street temperatures are 35 degrees cooler than outside street temperatures in the summer. What is the purpose of the Scottsdale design principles that call for the creation of shade canopies and new committees if we're going to allow a rogue, environmentally insensitive HOA to destroy all that has been created in 20 years? Tomorrow we will file 5 code enforcement requests with the city. We ask for you to intervene in any way possible and to help maintain the integrity of our community. I'm not an attorney, but in reading the city ordinances, it appears to me that the city has the power to enforce the DRB's decision, and if it chooses to do so. If the city allows the HOA to destroy the microclimate that has been created in the Arcadia neighborhood without lifting a finger to stop it, one has to question the city's true commitment to an environmentally responsible Scottsdale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Laporte. That was the only comment from the public. So at this point, I will close public comment. We'll continue with the consent agenda. As posted, it shows as items 1 through 5. And for the record, item number 5 has been pulled by staff. So we're actually going to be taking action on consent agenda items 1 through 4. At this point, we also open up public comment on any of the consent agenda items, and I show that there is no comment on items 1 through 4. Also, if the colleagues council have a question for clarification, I see no hands on that on items 1 through 4. So at this point, I will ask for a motion and a second.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to accept consent agenda items 1 through 4.
You mean approve?
Approve.
Yes.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please record your vote. And I will call on Councilwoman Janik.
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimous. Next, we will move on to the regular agenda items, beginning with 5A. 5A is the Artisan Scottsdale rezoning, case 3ZN 2021, and number 3DA, Development Agreement 2021. Presenter is Brian Clough, Principal Planner, and then we'll have the applicant.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I'm Brian Clough with the city's current planning department. I'll be giving you an overview of the applicant's request for Artisan Scottsdale, case 3ZN 2021, as well as 3DA 2021. The specific request this evening from the applicant is to adopt Ordinance 4535 regarding a zoning district map amendment that would be from the central business downtown overlay to the downtown multiple use type 2 plan block development, along with the downtown core type 1 plan block development. It's for a mixed use development that includes 83 dwelling units along with 5,000 square feet of commercial floor area. Additionally, it includes the Artisan Scottsdale development plan and the development agreement referenced in Resolution 12397. The subject site we're looking at this evening, highlighted in yellow on the screen, is on the south side of Indian School Road and along Marshall Way. Here's a closer look at the site, west of Marshall Way, south of Indian School Road, and north of First Avenue. Currently, it is a vacant lot that is used for overflow parking. You can see some local area businesses in the area consisting of 1-, 2-, and 3-story buildings. This is the existing zoning on the property, the C2 downtown overlay zoning district. And then the requested zoning with the downtown multiple use type 2 plan block development and downtown overlay over the majority portion of the site. And then this corner over here on the southeast is the downtown core type 1, also with the plan block development downtown overlay. This is the site relative to the Old Town Plan land use table. A closer look of that here shows a portion of the site in the downtown multiple use category, shown in green, and then the southeast portion in the downtown core in blue. This is the Old Town Plan development types map, with a closer look here showing that the property is split between the type 1 and type 2 areas with the blue and the green. This is a look at the proposed site plan for the development, which is on approximately 1.92 gross acre site. It is broken up into 2 buildings, the northern building including about 60 dwelling units, with another 23 in the southern building. Access to the site is provided into a below-grade garage off of First Avenue in this area here. The alley that currently bisects the site will also remain open. A couple items to note: the 83 units come out to approximately 43 dwelling units per acre as far as density goes. There is a 3-level below-grade parking structure that's providing parking for the development. Within that, the city is entering into an agreement with the developer to construct 55 public parking spaces that are proposed to be located on that first below-grade level of the garage. The southern building located here is where the approximate 5,000 square feet of commercial floor area would be. And then I'll also note the applicant is proposing a couple public open space areas, one in this area here at First Avenue and Marshall Way, and then another here at Indian School Road and Marshall Way. This is the proposed landscape plan to go along with the development. To note here, the applicant is constructing new sidewalks surrounding the public streets around the development. On Indian School Road, landscaping and a new 10-foot sidewalk that continues down Marshall Way at a width of 10 feet, and then also on First Avenue. These are the proposed building elevations for the development. On the top is the north elevation, which would be fronting Indian School Road, and on the south is, or on the bottom is the southern elevation on First Avenue. The proposed building heights for the northern building is the taller building. It's at approximately 63 feet. That's inclusive of the mechanical equipment and within the 66-foot building height that's allowed within the Type 2 area without modification or bonus requests. And then the southern building here that's on First Avenue in Marshall Way is approximately 52 feet in height. That's inclusive of mechanical equipment. And within the 48-foot building height that's allowed in the type 1 area with an additional 6 feet of mechanical. Here's the additional elevations of the east side fronting on Marshall Way on the top, and the west elevation on the bottom. With the request for a plan block development, the applicant can request amended development standards from the standard downtown requirements. With this application, they are requesting one amended development standard, and that has to do with the building location requirements of the downtown district. And because of the curve along Marshall Way and the combination of type 1 and type 2 development types, which the red line that you see here illustrates the boundary between type 1 and type 2 there. So that creates challenges in complying with those building location requirements due to different setback requirements for those different types. So what the applicant is requesting is to amend that standard to allow a greater setback. Typically in the type 1 areas on this side would be a minimum requirement of 14 feet, and portions of the building would need to be at that 14 feet. Within the type 2 area would be a minimum setback of 20 feet. And the applicant's requesting to change those to be minimum setback requirements to allow them to set the building back further in certain circumstances. And you can see what they're proposing here is a minimum setback of 22 feet, which is greater than what would be required. And it would be per the development plan as shown on the screen here. With regard to the development and sale agreement that's included with this request, there are some conveyances that include some city remnant parcels of old right-of-way acquisitions that the developer is proposing to acquire. Also, the city is proposing to require those 55 public parking spaces within the garage and a garage easement to go along with that to provide the public access rights to those parking spaces. There's also construction timing included within the development agreement that addresses construction start times. The applicant would be required to commence construction within 3 years of approval. If they were unable to perform, then the applicant and or the city could initiate a reversion of the zoning back to the zoning prior to approval. Additionally, there is a construction mitigation plan proposed within the development agreement that I'll touch a little bit more on later. It addresses traffic routes, workforce vehicle parking, construction vehicle parking, and that is an exhibit to the development agreement. Or other boards and commissions, this did go before our development review board at their January 20th, 2022 meeting. They forwarded a recommendation of approval with a 5-0 vote. Additionally, it went before our planning commission at their February 23rd, 2022 meeting, and they forwarded a recommendation for approval with a vote of 6-1. They also included a stipulation that recommended inclusion of a construction mitigation plan with the application. Public involvement has involved staff and applicant notifications of our typical 750-foot radius. I believe the applicant also exceeded that radius with their notification. They had an open house meeting February 8th of 2021, and also follow-up after that at multiple times after the initial open house meeting. Comments have been received, several comments both in favor and opposition. Many of the concerns that were brought up by the opposition had to do with traffic, access points, building massing, construction impacts, and parking. And then a little bit more about the construction mitigation plan. More recently, the construction impacts that the project might have on surrounding area businesses has been the focus of concern of a lot of these comments, with emphasis on potential closures on First Avenue, as well as closures or limiting access to the public parking. So as I mentioned before, staff, since Planning Commission has been working closely with the applicant and developer team on drafting up a construction mitigation plan that has been included as Exhibit P1 in the development and sale agreement. And I'll mention the existing plan does not propose any closures to First Avenue or limitation to access of the public parking spaces on First Avenue. However, it does provide for flexibility for the city to make potential modifications to that plan as may be needed for potential public safety or other issues that may arise. Additionally, the applicant has worked with the local area property owners on a private agreement that further restricts some of the items related to the public parking on the street, and the applicant can go into additional detail on that. So in conclusion, just reiteration of the request this evening for the zoning district map amendment ordinance number 4535, as well as the resolution for the development plan and development and sale agreement. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here with a presentation prepared.
Thank you. Whoa. We will move on to the applicant and then open public comment on this case.
Mayor, members of the council, for your record, John Berry, 6750 East Camelback Road in Scottsdale. The Artisan is a pedestrian-friendly gateway to the Arts District. It implements long-held community goals for our city, including the provision of 2 public art plazas and 55 new public underground parking spaces. Now, locating the public parking in this area of downtown was supported by the voters. Now, the city came to us to meet that need. The city recognized that this is a strategic location where businesses and visitors, both south of Indian School Road in the Main Street area and north of Indian School Road, could take advantage of this parking. Now, the city wanted us to build 55 public spaces. Now, they recognize that the private sector can actually build more spaces for less than the public sector can. So the city came to us and said, would you build this for us? We said, sure. Then they said, well, would you maintain these spaces for the public? And we said, well, okay, we'll do that too. And then they came to us and said, well, we want the best location in the underground parking for the public parking garage. And we said, okay, we agreed to that too. And given the city, and we'll build the city, those spaces at the top of the garage closest to the street. Obviously, the taxpayers are benefiting by getting more for less. We also said yes to achieving an important general plan goal. We're doing so with 2 public art plazas that are approximately 10,000 square feet. Again, built and maintained by the builder, not by the city, not by the taxpayers. Again, the taxpayers benefit. At First Avenue and Marshall, we will transform a barren corner into a spectacular and meaningful public open space in our old town. At the very visible corner of Indian School Road and Marshall Way, there will be a new gateway to the Arts District with a very unique feature and a first for the city. In collaboration with the Gallery Association, we will be providing free of charge a window to Main Street at this intersection. What do I mean by that? It will be a space 26 feet by 11 feet that will, in the kind of the parlance of vernacular of marketeers, it will be a teaser space for Main Street and the galleries with display space and a video wall that will attract folks to the galleries and Main Street off of the Indian School and Marshall Way area. Now, staff referenced that we are requesting 1 amended standard. That amended standard is to move the building further away from the streets. This orange area on both sides of the south building, this orange area is the area where if we did not ask for this amended standard to move the building further away, those orange areas are where the ordinance would allow us to put 4-story buildings closer to those streets. So this building would be larger with a larger footprint. Now, what does this amended development standard mean for the community? A larger public plaza, a smaller building footprint, and a better pedestrian experience. Now, staff noted that we are not asking for any bonus height or density. In the type 1 area, the base is 54, we're at 52. In the type 2 area, the base with no bonus is 72 feet, and we're at 64 feet. The density that would be allowed at the base would be 96 residences. We are at 83 residences. The Artisan is over-parked. We have a surplus of 21 spaces. What does that mean? The guest space ratio will go from the required 1 guest space for every 6 residences under your ordinance. With these extra spaces, we'll have 1 guest space for every 2.4 residences. What about traffic? I want you to keep in mind that this property has C2 zoning today that allows a plethora of uses. By right, no city council, no planning commission, straight to DRB. Those uses, compared to the Artisan use you're hearing this evening, those uses in C2 would generate 49%. The Artisan would generate 49% less automobile traffic, but very importantly, more pedestrian traffic. Staff referenced the construction mitigation plan. We listened to the businesses in this area, and I will tell you that I'm not aware of any project that has ever gone this far to do so much to minimize these very important construction impacts to these businesses. And that's been a 3-pronged effort. The first prong is a stipulated, very detailed construction mitigation plan. The second prong, and this is a first in the city, is this off-street parking plan enforcement agreement, which is a private agreement that will be recorded between the builder and area businesses that will ensure that off-street parking is required and utilized for the workforce at this site. And finally, the third prong, something I'm pleased to let you know, is as of last Friday, we actually have signed a lease with a property owner about 500 feet away to the west to use their 16 spaces on that parking lot. Now, in phases 1 and 2 of this, as they build the underground parking structure, there'll be about 20 workers on site. Now, we believe we can accommodate all of those 20 workers on site, but if we can't, then we have 16 spaces 500 feet away for them to utilize. When it comes to phase 3, after the parking garage is built, all of those workers will be able to park in the parking garage, and if for some reason they can't, this plan that we've entered into requires us to go find other off-street parking, additional off-street parking for those workers. Mayor, members of the council, in conclusion, I'd like to talk about some of the community benefits associated with this project. Clearly, the most important one is transforming this vacant eyesore into an oasis with 2 public art plazas of about 10,000 square feet. No request for additional height or density. The single amended development standard moving the building further away from the street to the benefit of the public. An investment of approximately $40 million in our old town. Less traffic than the existing zoning uses that could go there today. New 10-foot shaded sidewalks to enhance pedestrian comfort. We implement the city's sensitive design principles as well as their urban design and architectural guidelines. There is a substantial public art contribution. We are over-parked. Talking about parking, this is a substantial benefit to the tune of about $1 million today to the taxpayers. The city came to us and said, we'll pay you $1 less than the $40,000 that it would cost us at the time when we entered into this to build these parking spaces for you and for the public. Well, as of early this year, the cost to build those spaces is now close to $60,000 a space. We went to the city and said, well, geez, costs have gone up. This, we don't want to, would you be willing to maybe meet us part of the way and not have us absorb the new cost, the increased construction costs like they talked about at the Prada del Sol? No. The city said, no, we think that this would be something that would be a good thing for you to do. We said, okay, we agreed to do it. Now the challenge is that's about $1 million based on the cost of those parking spaces today that we have agreed to do for the city, along with maintaining those spaces. Now I would bet you dollars to donut that between the time of this hearing and if it's approved and when this starts construction, I don't think those costs are going down, and we will be required to stick with the $39,999 price to deliver those parking spaces to the public and then maintain them for you. We talked about the efforts we've gone through to deal with the concerns about construction mitigation, all very valid concerns for these area businesses. We have done so. We will be reducing the urban heat island effect. We will be more than doubling the amount of trees on this site. Short-term rentals are prohibited. As staff noted, we're stipulated to commence construction within 3 years. We have this unique and first collaboration with the Gallery Association to provide this teaser window to try and attract people down to the galleries off of the busy Indian School Road and Marshall Way intersection. The regional office for this builder, for my client, the regional office will be on site. There will be pride and eyes on this development. We are creating, very importantly, a long-time goal of this council and of this community to create meaningful Old Town public open space. Mayor, members of the council, we are pleased to be here with the staff recommendation for approval. We've worked very hard for that. They have been very tough on us, and we're pleased to be here with the recommendation for approval. We are here with a unanimous recommendation for approval from your DRB and a Planning Commission recommendation for approval on a 6-1 vote. Members of the council, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have or wait until after public testimony. And I would note, I got this done with 3 seconds to spare. I'm going to charge double for that, but I got it done with three seconds to spare. So thank you.
Okay, we do have one hand up from Councilmember Durham, but I do also have 7 people for public testimony or comment. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. How can you ensure or guarantee that that first level of parking is going to be reserved for the general public and not used by tenants of the buildings?
Mayor Ortega, Council Member Durham, that was a question that arose early on when we met with some of the businesses in the area, and we've been meeting with them for, gosh, 1.5 years. I don't know how long it's been. And the way we addressed that was a very expensive solution, but we think it works very well. There is a separate elevator core and a separate stairwell that is dedicated just to that first floor of public parking. That elevator core does not take you into the building. The stairwell does not take you into the building. There is a separate private elevator core for the bottom 2 levels where tenants and guests park. And interestingly, that elevator that takes you into the building does not stop at the public parking level. Neither do the stairs open up into that level. So we have a true bifurcation of the access for somebody who wants to use the public level and still somehow get into the building. So we've tried to discourage that as much as possible. The other thing I would note is that we have excess guest parking on site. So we have substantially more guest parking than required by the ordinance. 1 guest parking space for every 6 residences is your ordinance requirement. We're 21 spaces over. With those excess parking spaces, we will be at 1 guest parking space for every 2.4 residences. Again, we're providing even more parking than you all approved last year for a requirement for guest parking. So we think in combination of those, that level of public parking will, to the greatest extent we can control, be truly public parking.
Thank you.
Well, very good. We will move to public comment. Oh, wait, I have one question for you, Ms. Berry. You use the word mixed use, and actually less than 1% of the built space is for office, I believe, and or other commercial use. So it seems like over 99% of it is residential, yet the term mixed use, how do you justify that?
Mayor Ortega, members of the council, we actually on the ground level, which seems to be the where the community will interact with this building is on the ground level with the street. With the 2 public plazas that we're providing, we think that is a significant benefit to the public. And the idea of that ground level mixed use is to activate the street, is to create vibrancy and interest in something that attracts pedestrians. You don't have a dead space along the pedestrian ways, so you want to attract people back and forth with activity and vibrancy. That's what those 2 public art plazas do. Additionally, the units, the residences along Indian School Road will actually open up to the sidewalk. So they will have a door and a patio on Indian School Road. So that also activates the Indian School Road frontage. As to the ground level of this building, again, where the interaction occurs and where we want that sense of pedestrian activity and vibrancy, which is eyes on the street, safety. I would note that across the street this morning at the city's what's that? Falls Park, or Falls, what is it called? The Horseshoe Falls, thank you very much. That was not a lucky answer with the horseshoe. So Horseshoe Falls Park, I unfortunately noticed, and was, terrible to witness, but, 2 homeless people that were utilizing that as their abode, which was too bad. But I would also note on the ground level here, 64% of the ground level of this building is non-residential use. So I think we've tried to address that ground level. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Next, we will move to some public comment. We have Jimmy Erickson and then Sonny Kirtley.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Jimmy Erickson. I've been a custom jeweler. Am I doing something wrong?
If you could move over a little bit to the mic or move there, that's better.
Are you sure? Okay. I've been a custom jeweler in Old Town Scottsdale for 39 years. I've been in 4 locations. I was on 5th Avenue, I was on Goldwater, and I was on Marshall Way. And I had to move from each location because there was no parking. No parking, no parking. 26 years ago, I bought the property right across the street because there would be parking there, and there has been. But now we're facing a problem again. There's going to be no parking. All the people on 1st Avenue, the 14 businesses, we're destination shops. We are not people who walk down the street and walk into our store. Never happened. In 26 years, I've never had one person ever walk into my store and say, "Hi, I was walking down the street. What do you do?" No. All the people that come in, they know what I want. They know what they do. This is the same for me. This is the same for Jim Sudos for Ceramic Arts. This is the same for the other people on the block. We are destinations. And in order to be a destination shop, we must have parking. If we don't have parking, most of my ladies who come to me are 60, 70 years old. They're not going to park in underground parking. That's nuts. They want to park in front of our shops and walk in the door. We take care of them. They get in their car, and they drive home. And that's a big problem. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, and I plan to do it another 10 to 15 years. But in order to do it, I need to have people find a place to park. And this is a disaster parking situation. Now, I think it's going to be easy with underground parking. Most people don't like underground parking. I hate it myself. I don't want to park underground. What a horrible thing. Most ladies don't like underground parking. That's even worse. So no, it's not a good idea. And trying to talk to making this pedestrian walkway, that's crazy. The Scottsdale did this 30 years ago when they changed the location of Marshall Way. I was on the Marshall Way Retail Association at that time, and it was going to make it so much easier. We're going to have all the people from the Marshall Way Art walk to Main Street. You know what? It never happened. My window and my bench face the curved street. There's nobody ever walking it. That's just a goofy idea that somebody thought about years ago, and it didn't work. It didn't work then. It's not going to work now. You're going to put this building right across from not only my business, but my home. I built my home there. I've lived there for 14 years. And now I get to wake up every morning with all these people going in and out of their driveway? You've got to be kidding me. It should be, the entrance to the property, if you approve it, should be on Marshall Way. Definitely not First Avenue, because if you put it on First Avenue, you're going to kill all the businesses. You might as well just shoot us all now, because we're not going to have any businesses because there's not going to be a place to park. That's a big problem. So you got to stop this now before it gets started. Or otherwise, I'm out of business, Jim Sudol's out of business, David Michael Miller's out of business, Valerie Ann's out of business. I could go on and list the number of people that are out of business, but it's just going to be the way it is. So you got to stop it. If you don't approve it, you approve John Barry, okay, I know John Barry, yeah, great. Going to build something great. But you can't ruin the people that have been there a long time. It's just not fair. Most of the people on our street have been there 10, 20, 30 years or more, and now it's going to be all dead. Why?
Thank you, Mr. Erickson. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Sonny Kirtley, and then Danielle Pomasi.
I don't know where we are on the clock, but good evening or good afternoon, Mayor Ortega, council members. My name is Sonny Kirtley. I am here representing the COGS Coalition in Greater Scottsdale Board of Directors, and our address is on file. COGS supports the construction mitigation plan negotiated by the area merchants and owners with the John Barry and Artisan team. The inclusion of an emergency-only closure by the city is a critical amendment to that document. We particularly appreciate the respect the Artisan team has demonstrated toward the businesses and to understand the severe negative impact on a closed public street to the livelihood of those businesses. Looking ahead to the future, COGS will strongly support a City Council directive to staff to draft a city-wide construction mitigation plan. There are many, many cities that already have this as an example for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Danielle Pomasi and then Marilyn Atkinson.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I do have a map here. I don't know if someone can turn this Elmo on. There we go. Let's go this way. My name is Danielle Pomisel, and I reside at 7607 East Minnesota Avenue in Scottsdale. Alvin Yono, the owner of 4 parcels on First Avenue, 7007, 7015, 7025, and 7029, all across the street from the proposed artesian, cannot be here tonight because he is ill. I wanted to read his letter for the record since he is a significant property owner in the area. Dear Mayor and council members, as a nearby property owner on First Avenue, I am writing to ask for your support for the Artesian Scottsdale project located at Indian School in Marshall. The Artesian will add to the vibrancy of the Arts District with a wonderful mix of uses that are needed in this area of Scottsdale. This corner is an important one for our city and deserves to be more than a dirt lot. A sensitive and appropriate development such as this one is welcomed for this area. I urge you to support this project. Sincerely, Alvin Yono. You should have a copy of this letter at your seat, along with a copy of a letter of support from the Coach House, which is immediately adjacent to the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Marilyn Atkinson and then Bob Penchman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to talk about the mitigation plan. This is something that needs to be done in all of the areas. Matter of fact, all of Scottsdale. I have property that's in historic Old Town on Brown Avenue. We will be coming to you, I'm sure, down the road shortly to push forward a mitigation plan. Parking is key to survival of business owners. You cannot survive without parking. We already have a shortage of parking in the downtown. If construction vehicles take over an area, where are they going to park? How are the merchants going to succeed in their businesses? Because you're not getting in the customers that you have. If those of you were in the downtown during the season, you've noticed, and I've noticed even now, our season has run late. There are still people coming. There are still a lot of people on the street. One of the folks mentioned parking underground. Parking underground sounds great, but we have proof already. We can say, oh, Fashion Square has that. They're a whole different animal. We have at the Buckboard Trail parking lot, no, I'm sorry, at the Parking Corral parking lot, underground, and it's not used. It hasn't been used, it's been used, it's been there for years. So we do support always a mitigation plan for each individual area and for parking off-site. We hope that the council takes this into consideration and even considers it for a public citywide ordinance, because it has to, or mitigation plan of some time. We have to protect what we have. And I thank you very much, and my address is on record.
Thank you, Marilyn. And next we have Bob Hedgeman and Susan Wood. Susan Wood signed up. She offered her time to Bob Hedgeman, so we'll make it clock it at 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Ortega, council members. The name is Bob Hedgeman. The address is on the record. And most Old Town business owners don't oppose development in Old Town. But when a development gets this close to the heart of a shopping area, where it can have a negative impact on the local businesses, that's where the problem starts. As a point of reference, when the canopy was built, because it had plenty of staging area, not one merchant complained about construction mitigation or construction adverse effect. So I want to put that into perspective. Specifically on First Avenue, they have a major parking issue right now. And for people who say, you know, it's all a bunch of hyperbole and exaggeration, the gravel lot today that the Artisan will be built on is being used for parking overflow. So on First Avenue, not only are most of the street spaces usually taken, there's major overflow. That lot, that gravel lot, is being used as an overflow lot for a nearby restaurant, a nearby bar who happens to support this. And at times there are 40, 50, 60, 70 or more cars parked there. That lot obviously goes away. And it's a private lot. It's not the developer's fault. It just goes away. That's just fact. But that's more reason why we are concerned about preserving as many of the street spaces as possible during the construction. Now, let me just put this on the projector here. This is an example of that lot, for example, that the Artisan will be built on. Cars are trying to make it to it, and they'd have to wait for space. Here's another example, just to show you how short the parking is in that area. Now, for a large construction like this, there are usually two categories of negative adverse effect on local businesses. One of it is that construction vehicles can park, and large crews of construction vehicles, up to 50 maybe, would park on the surrounding streets. and the other one is that the streets can be closed off by the city for public parking. The first piece of that has been addressed through a private agreement between the business owners and the developer. And there is a private agreement. John Barry said it's going to be a public record. I'm happy to report that this agreement has now been signed in a short 3 days by 43 local businesses. That's how concerned they are about this. But this agreement basically, all it does is that the developer commits that the construction vehicles will be parked off-site and not on specific streets and parking lots in the area. And by the way, the city could have easily entered into this agreement with the developer directly. They chose not to. As a last resort, we entered into the agreement. But there's still one key piece left that has to be addressed, and that is the city keeping the parking spaces open. Let me put this on the slide projector. 2 blocks west of that construction site, of the artisan construction site, this is a similarly, maybe a larger size construction. The city has allowed all of the parking spaces, every single one of them, to be blocked off so the public can't park on it. They have construction material, and to me, this is picking winners and losers. The developer is the winner, obviously, in this case, because they have all this use of this space, the same parking spaces that these local merchants rely on, by the way, for their customers. We cannot allow this to happen on First Avenue. Now, there is a construction mitigation plan that's attached to the development agreement. But we need concrete language, because Brian Clough, he mentioned that this is flexibility. This is what flexibility looks like, by the way. This is the visual of flexibility. To guard against this, we need just a one-line language that says that the street spaces on and around the artisan shall remain open to public use, except if there's a case of an emergency, and to me, emergency is a crane is falling, there's a sewer leakage, not an ongoing 3-year condition like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have French Thompson and then Mr. David Michael Miller.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Caputi, City Council members, my name is French Thompson. I live, my business is 7148 East Main Street, Scottsdale. I've got a little thing to put on the screen also. This is a simple sentence that we'd like to have added to this agreement. Very short little thing. But what it does is it says if we're going to close off any streets, public streets, citizen streets, streets we've all paid for, taxes, they're only given to the developer for an emergency, only for an emergency. As you saw in the photographs that Mr. Pejman put up here, the city has given away an entire block, an entire city block of public property to a private developer to put their construction materials on, to put their cranes. There's 4 restaurants right across the street from that all of their parking has been taken away from them on the street. That's my street. That's your street. The city's paid for it. The citizens have paid for that. This is just a simple sentence to be added to say if the city has to come along and close the street for any reason, it's going to be an honest-to-God emergency. You just don't give away public property to developers for their own private use. This has been going on for 2 years. I mean, that's literally, I can't even believe the city's doing this. And I hope the city looks into why this developer's been able to use that whole entire one city block for their construction material and do something about it and prevent this from happening in the future. This isn't the kind of thing that you do to your merchants. I mean, there should be good development that comes in. Artisan is a good example of that. They want to watch out for the businesses. They want to watch out for the merchants. They want to be a good citizen. They don't want to have a negative impact on our businesses. They would like our businesses to be there so that when they're open and they have residents and business there, that they can enjoy us. So we're a mutually beneficial situation. But if you're closing off streets that, by the way, it's probably been 5 years that I come up here and say, parking. I feel like walking up here one day and just say for 3 minutes, parking. But that 1 minute's of silence was probably the same thing. So I just implore you to add this simple language to this agreement. If they need to close the street, it's a real emergency. Thank you very much. John, I beat you. I got 12 seconds.
Thank you. We have one last speaker, David Michael Miller.
Mayor, Council. My name is David Michael Miller. I own and operate an interior design studio on First Avenue at 7034 East First Avenue. The Artisan project will be immediately at my east property boundary and will be directly behind me across the alley. I have the distinct misfortune of being in this position. I'm going to put this on the screen if I can. So this building right here, this white streak, that's my building. It was designed by Wendell Burnett. It was completed in the year 2000. At the time, I built it to the maximum allowed height of 30 feet. I enjoy a second floor office that looks out over the roofs of the stores across the street on Indian School. With the Artisan in place, being 60 feet, out my back window, out my private office window, I'll be looking directly into somebody's living room. My building is 30 feet, the Artisan is 60 feet. I don't think that this bulk and mass and height belongs on First Avenue. Also, looking right next door to my building, you can see where I have my customer parking. It's a gray splotch there to the right of the white roof. So for the Artisan, I'm going to be right next door to all the ingress and egress of parking into the Artisan. According to the traffic study from the city, there are going to be 650 ins and outs into the parking a day. So my luxury home clients that I'm bringing to my office are going to be sitting in line waiting for people to go in and out of the Artisan. 650 moving cars a day right next door to me. That's bothersome. So the effect of the project to me is going to leave me in a canyon of building mass. And I think it's very unfortunate for the city, for First Avenue in general, to have to suffer this. I understand the building's promoted as being fantastic and, the belt buckle of the arts community. But I think this amount of mass and bulk does not belong on this street. In addition, when I was first presented this project by the developers' representatives, I was told that everyone up and down First Avenue, all my neighbors supported it unanimously, which I found hard to believe. They said, we came to you last because we knew you were going to be the toughest sell. So at the time the project was presented, I thought this is a moving locomotive that I have no power in altering the speed of. But following that presentation, I went and I talked to all my neighbors, and none of my neighbors were for it. So there's something wrong with this community outreach problem that brings back information to council that everybody in the neighborhood is all gung-ho for this to land on First Avenue, when that is clearly not the case. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment, and I'll ask the applicant to come up if there's anything anything to add or respond to?
Mayor, members of the council, first off, I do want to thank the merchants in the area that have taken the time to work with us as we work together to try and address these issues. I think we need to step back for a second because a lot of the issues have focused on parking and the availability of parking and access onto First Avenue for the garage. And I think we need to step back and remember that this property is a vacant piece of property that has certain property rights associated with it and certain zoning category associated with it, which is the C2 zoning category, which means that someone today going straight to DRB can build some of those uses in C2, which would include some very successful restaurants, which could include a 48-foot tall office building, which would have underground parking by right. So the existing zoning allows substantial uses that would access directly First Avenue. What our traffic analysis does show is that those C2 uses would generate more traffic than what we're proposing. In fact, the Artisan generates 49% less traffic. So if the number 650 a day for residential use sounds high, I want you to increase that by 50%, which are the types of traffic counts that you would have from successful restaurants, offices, and other C2 uses. Now, the property today, again, by right, here is First Avenue, has 2 existing curb cuts onto First Avenue, and they have the right to use those today. I will tell you that our client did not like the idea of access onto First Avenue. We didn't like it. In fact, we submitted 2 plans, including one time with the concurrence of Mr. Miller, with the access continuing to be on the alley. And it wasn't until the city staff and the transportation staff, in no uncertain terms, told us that that would be a traffic nightmare and a liability waiting to happen for both the city and the developer. And they had a list of issues as to why we should not have access off the alleyway. We didn't want to believe them. We had 2 meetings with staff. At our second meeting with transportation staff, we brought our traffic engineer. For those of you that think that traffic engineers are shills for the developers and don't give you any answer you pay them to give, wrong. Their professional licenses are on the line, just like architects. Lawyers, okay, but engineers, architects are different. When our traffic engineer joined that meeting with transportation staff, she walked out and she said, they are absolutely right. I will not seal a plan that has access off of the alleyway. They're right, in spite of the efforts of the community and ourselves to try and convince staff to the opposite. So we conceded that that was the right thing to do, to take access off of First Avenue. I will also tell you that there's another reason that you probably don't want access off the alleyway for public parking. If we're going to continue to have public parking there, I want you to look at and get familiar with another situation where you have public parking off an alleyway. This is Main Street, this is Marshall, this is the Museum of the West. This is the access off of an alleyway into the underground parking for Museum of the West. I can't tell you the number of times I get complaints. I can't imagine the complaints you all get or staff gets. I didn't even know there was public parking there. Would you put some type of giant blimp up there with an arrow flashing down that says public parking here? Because you don't know it's there. If we collectively are going to invest this amount of money in underground public parking, let's make sure it's accessible and visible for the people that can use it. Mayor, members of the council, I think those are the kind of global issues that I heard about traffic and access. As the construction mitigation, boy, we have done everything possible on the private sector side to address construction mitigation, and we're very proud of it. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Good. So I see Councilwoman Whitehead as a comment or question, and then Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, thank you, all the parties involved and the public speakers. It is always hard when a privately owned open space is developed, and that's what is going on here. I just want to thank the merchants, too, who have been tirelessly involved in this process for a year, and of course, the development team. So I think this project has a lot of my favorite new normals. So we have the performance contract, so we're not just handing off zoning changes. We're actually going to have the project built in 3 years. That's very good. This is a project that will get built if approved. More robust landscaping plan, more trees, public open space, and pedestrian connectivity. So those are, well, you know, and higher design standards. So that's, thank you, Jeff. So that is the new normal, which I really support. But this project offers many firsts, which I'm really excited about. And a lot of us have been involved in this. So the public-private parking conundrum, we've seen it fail on a number of parking garages. So I brought that to the attention, and others did, to this development team. 2 different elevators and 2 different stairwells. That is an investment in our community, and that will ensure that public parking spaces paid for with tax dollars actually are open for the public. So that is a huge new first. The collaboration, oh, and I should thank the city manager. Good negotiating. Sorry the price went up, guys. So collaboration with the gallery district. We're an arts town. And so I love the new concept. And I'm not sure where this came from. I guess after a year of working with art galleries and other businesses, the window to Main Street. So again, this is privately owned property that will feature local art and will bring people into our arts district. I think this is exactly the type of project we want. And I want to point out, too, that it is perhaps higher than some people would like, and I appreciate that, but it's a mid-rise, it's barely a mid-rise project. We're looking at smaller projects that are unique and upscale and bring something different to our downtown, so this is definitely a fit there. And finally, the construction mitigation plan, another first. And I should point out that the parking, again, the parking code has been changed and increased because of input from our businesses. So this not only meets the parking code, but exceeds it. But now we have a construction mitigation plan, which honestly is good for the developer and the businesses. It's great that we're investing in our downtown. It's great that we're gonna have these really fabulous new projects, and we're gonna have residents that are 24/7 and new visitors and new businesses. But 3 years of construction, that's a long time, and we've seen this in or I've certainly seen in other downtowns where it's just a mess. And really, we have the space and we have the ability to have construction parking somewhere other than our public streets. And this development team has been incredibly generous working with us. So a couple firsts. We have the construction vehicles, an agreement, a private agreement, where the construction vehicles will not be on those public street parking spots. That's pretty cool. And we have a developer that has actually gone under contract with a private parking lot in case there is overflow. That's a first. And we do have this city agreement that will prevent closure of public streets. And I do want to talk about the request of one of the speakers. Anyway, these are all firsts. I'm really excited about it. I support the project. I do want to ask staff about adding some language, because we have seen I know the street that was in the picture is just completely closed off. It seems to me that the verbiage provided to us by French Thompson is fine, but I would want to add, just basically, and I think this is what the city has in mind, but it's okay to put it in writing, is just that these parking spaces and the street itself will not be closed off unless there's an emergency or a hazardous condition. So maybe that's something staff wants to address. But other than that, I'm very grateful to the businesses that were involved. I do think some changes were made by by the input from businesses that still don't support the project, but I think it's a great project overall. Thank you.
Okay, I see council. Well, city attorney has some comments probably in response to Councilwoman Whitehead, and then I have Councilwoman Littlefield, and I have a couple questions for the applicant as well. City attorney and Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilwoman Whitehead. I just want to clarify that the construction mitigation plan and the proposed development agreement do provide that the public street and the public parking will remain open. I think what the complaint from the citizens that you heard from tonight was there is a provision in the construction mitigation plan and in the development agreement that does allow city staffs, particularly the city manager, some flexibility to make some changes to the construction mitigation plan if need be. But it's not full or complete discretion. That discretion is limited to changes that are reasonably necessary. And let me read the exact provision. The city manager or designee shall have the authority to make adjustments to the construction mitigation plan as may be reasonably necessary to accommodate any health, safety, or public interest concern that may arise during construction. And again, I believe the citizens you heard from really would prefer it be restricted further to an emergency. And I heard a falling crane mentioned as an example. I think it's important for the council and the public and the citizens who are concerned to understand the city has a non-delegable duty to keep its right-of-way reasonably safe. We have to have the ability to navigate and manage our right-of-way because we have the responsibility to do that. And that's why the city has been reluctant to put in the construction mitigation plan that only emergencies, current emergency, and not a foreseeable problem or risk or issue, can be addressed. I do think that council should consider the implications to doing that and the disputes that can arise about whether or not a true emergency is present if the construction mitigation plan were deviated from. So I do think some of it has been addressed in the private agreement, but I wanted the council to understand why the wording and the construction mitigation plan is the way it is, and more importantly, to understand what the wording is, because it is there. It's just slightly more broad than what the citizens were suggesting.
Thank you. I have another question about that. So it does seem like just there's different words with similar meanings. What is defined as public interest?
I think that is left to the reasonable discretion of the city manager. But my thought would be it's not just for the developer's convenience. And I'll let the city manager or staff that worked on this mitigation plan comment if they would like. But it's not just for the developer's convenience. It's also, if you're seeing a big traffic jam, maybe we need to do something about that. That's in the public interest. So you're taking the good of more citizens over the wishes of a few, and you're weighing that, balancing as it moves forward. You can imagine if there's a big traffic jam, eventually that's going to cause a problem, and that could potentially cause a health safety problem. But when in time does that arise? I think that you have to leave it to the technical staff who manage the right-of-way to figure that out, because as we all know, construction is a dynamic situation, and it's hard to plan for every contingency. And at the end of the day, the city is responsible for its right-of-way and responsible to the public for its right-of-way, the public using the right-of-way, not just the developer who's also using the right-of-way, not just the business owners, and we always try to be very sensitive to them when there's construction, but to everybody who is using that right-of-way. And I can't tell you how many complaints and claims we get in every week, every month, when there's an accident on our right-of-way, and it seems pretty clear to at least the legal department that those are accidents caused by private individuals, but the city is always blamed. So we have to really be very careful about how we're managing our right-of-way.
Okay, thank you. I'll listen to what my colleagues say. Yeah, I agree. And in fact, the example you gave seems to me the argument that the street would be open because you're trying not to allow traffic jams. So, okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Littlefield, and then Vice Mayor Caputi.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. And I hate to tell you, ma'am, but they're not going to stop complaining no matter what we do. So that's not an issue. I like this project. The project has a lot of very positive features to it. And however, I want to address the issue of the insuring of the construction project, which will take at least 3 years and does not negatively impact the surrounding businesses. It is my understanding the developer has agreed to an off-site parking agreement that requires him to park the construction vehicles off-site so that the streets and the roads can remain open for the businesses in the area. I believe that's a first in Scottsdale, and I certainly hope it's not a last. So thank you very much for that. However, the second mitigation issue, and I believe this is also what Councilwoman Whitehead was concerned about, is not completely solved with this plan. The city, too, has to commit to keeping the on-site parking spaces open during the anticipated 3-year construction period, unless some unforeseen emergency occurs. Many of the merchants do not believe their businesses can survive during 3 years of construction that this project will require without an on-street parking access to their businesses. And I agree, and it is not the business of this council or of the city to close down our very well-known and very profitable businesses. These can be solved easily, this problem, I believe, by adding a simple sentence to paragraph 610, page 144 of the council report to state, and this is a quote, "The city shall not close or block off the on-street parking spaces on First Avenue, Marshall, south of First Avenue, and Main Street during the construction, except in cases of emergency, per the definition of emergency in the city's ordinance code 47-2. This definition reads, in Scottsdale Code of Ordinances, section 47-2, definition emergency means a sudden, unexpected event that may create an imminent risk of injury or death to any person or imminent risk to public health, to safety, requiring immediate response. This is a rational and reasonable definition that everybody can understand. And it should also include, or we could consider including, that any hazard to public health and safety should be considered a part of the risk of the public health and safety as defined in this code and ordinance section 47-2. Many of the merchants in the area still fear, as you can tell tonight, that their businesses will close. They and I do not believe they should survive, or they could survive, the 3 years of construction that this project will take without an on-street parking access to their business, and I have to agree with them. It's unreasonable to expect otherwise. Therefore, I would like to move that we amend this contract to include the above definition as stated as part of the city's traffic mitigation plan for this contract. This motion will bring this contract in line with the city's own definitions of emergencies, and it would greatly relieve the minds of most of our business owners that work and own businesses in this downtown area. Thank you.
Okay, I heard a request for a motion, and I didn't hear a second. We have continued discussion at this point. Vice Mayor, did someone second that? I'm sorry.
This is Councilwoman Janik. I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. I did hear a second. Any discussion on the motion? When I looked at that text, by the way, it said the city shall not do it, close it off. Shouldn't it say the city developer or contractor shall not? Okay, I'm just listening to you, but it says the city won't close it off. We're not building the project, right? I don't know how that wording could be more explanatory. It says the city will not, or I believe is.
Well, I believe that the contract that the developer has created for us with his project covers their part of keeping the parking lots open and the parking spaces open, that they have agreed to do that. But the other half of the equation is the city, and the city keeping the parking lots and the parking facilities open. And so that is what I am trying to address, is our obligation as part of a contract. If it's hazardous, if there's a danger to people, obviously, then whoever is designated to make those decisions, be it the city manager or whoever, they would come in and say, hey, we've got to move this stuff out. But I believe that the contractor has already agreed to this.
I just want to get a clarification, as far as, because it makes it sound like the city is taking the action. City Attorney, do you have just some clarification for so far?
Just trying to help with the motion so that everybody understands what it is. In my interpretation, and please correct me, Councilwoman Littlefield, if I'm wrong, you are trying to change the wording in 6.10 with your amendment, 6.10 of the development agreement. Change it from this wording: the city manager or designee shall have the authority to make adjustments to the construction mitigation plan as may be reasonably necessary to accommodate any health, safety, or public interest concerns that may arise during construction. You want to change that sentence to: the city manager or designee shall have the authority to make adjustments to the construction mitigation plan as may be reasonably necessary to accommodate any emergency as defined by section, and I forgot the section number that you listed.
Yeah.
Section number
47, the ordinance, to follow the city's ordinance. What my statement was the city shall not close or block off the on-street parking spaces on First Avenue, Marshall, south of First Avenue, and Main Street during the construction, except in cases of emergency as per the definition of emergency in the city's ordinance code 47.2. And that definition reads, in the city's code of ordinances 47-2 definition, emergency means a sudden unexpected event that may create an imminent risk or injury of death to any person or imminent risk to the public health or safety requiring immediate response. That is a rational and reasonable definition, I believe, and it would include any hazard to the public health and safety be considered part of the risk to the public health and safety as defined in our code and ordinance of 47-2. It just brings the two together into the same wording and the same definitions as we currently have in the ordinance.
Yes, thank you. I think the problem is, and what the mayor was trying to sort out, is the construction mitigation plan has in numerous places in it that the developer will not, and the city will not obstruct the parking or the street. And so I think to make your motion, really it is to change the wording of 6.10, the sentence about, take out the wording where it states any health, safety, or public interest concerns, and add any emergency as defined by Scottsdale City Ordinance that may arise during construction.
That's fine.
I would offer that as a clarification of your motion, and I hope I got that correct. I think I do.
I'm trying to bring the two into total alignment, and yes, I would be happy with that change, adjustment, whatever, yeah.
Thank you. I also just wanted to tie it together. If there's any other free legal advice, oh wait, did you have any comment? Okay, so you can sit down, I think. Mr. Berry, unless you had some comment. Otherwise.
I'm sorry, Mayor Ortega, I thought you said you had some questions for me, which is why.
Oh, excuse me. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to vote on the motion, and that clarified it for me as well. So I appreciate that. So at this point, we have a requested amendment with a second, and it's clarified for the record that all the other provisions have not changed. It was just this part. Any other discussion?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me. Okay. Vice Mayor Caputi, Councilmember Durham, Councilwoman Whitehead.
And Councilwoman Janik.
Okay, so we're not voting on the motion on the floor. We're going to continue conversation. Great. I actually had the pleasure to chair the Development Review Board when this project was brought through, and so I feel very strongly about this project, and like the rest of us, I've spent a lot of time on it, and so I have several comments that I want to make. This is a great project. We've all seen why. It replaces a vacant dirt lot with mixed-use options downtown and fulfills the goals of our general plan and our Old Town Character Area Plan. It's in a growth area, and they are not asking for additional height or density. It provides infrastructure improvements, cultural contributions, pocket parks, customers for our downtown merchants, and more than abundant parking. We always try to balance the benefits of new projects with our existing businesses. We fought hard to get 55 extra public parking spaces built with $2.2 million of our taxpayer money above our recently increased parking requirements to make sure that our local businesses, who we greatly value, have more than enough parking. Without the artisan, we get none of these things. This is a project that I feel is worthy of our city. I don't hear anyone saying that this isn't a great project. It seems to be delayed because of concerns about construction impacts on the area, which to me have been addressed. We all pay for public parking, and the public has a legal right to use it. A creative solution has been devised for this project between the developer and private citizens, but this is not meant for all situations. The city cannot overreach into a private construction project. As our city attorney pointed out, when things go wrong, this could mean serious legal exposure for our city. And local businesses asking for personal use of public parking is a slippery slope, in my opinion, that could be considered a gifting of public funds. The city also cannot be stripped of the authority and regulatory powers to make adjustments to the plan, again, as our city attorney has pointed out. We have to balance the needs of all of our 250,000 residents, and we have to be able to change the plan as needed for health, safety, and other public interest concerns. We have a duty to keep our streets safe, and we can't delegate this to a third party. People that aren't parties to the city contract shouldn't be dictating the terms of our city contracts. That is a dangerous practice. Construction in our city is inevitable, and it will cause temporary disruptions. A construction mitigation plan is a fantastic idea, and it is nothing new in our city. We have extensive rules, policies, and guidelines that manage all of our construction projects. These are in both our city code and our design standards and policy manual. The DS&PM which everyone might not be familiar with, and I actually brought with me today. I asked staff for a copy. You can see it's large and thick and heavy. Extensively covers construction mitigation. It's a regularly updated and citizen-reviewed plan. We're not just suddenly inventing the idea of construction mitigation. Good suggestions and negotiation always make our projects better. This is a dirt lot in a vibrant part of our city. Something is going to get built here, and we are risking losing all of these great things that we've heard about tonight in order to score political points. We want construction mitigation, I agree. We don't want construction annihilation. New investment re-energizes this area, which benefits all of our businesses. We want more people walking our streets. That helps our existing businesses. Most importantly, state law requires, and we see this in every packet we get, that we consider the aspects of a development plan that would affect the cost of construction of housing. Creating extra layers of unnecessary and redundant bureaucracy and red tape actually prolongs the pain and expense of a project. Forcing a business to implement an additional construction plan, preventing them from using available public parking, and managing their procurement and labor processes drives up the costs and opens up our city to lawsuits. There should always be a balance between the obligations of the city to protect its residents and businesses and the rights of private entities to engage and compete in free market activities. This is capitalism. Government is here to ensure and protect our freedoms, and as was pointed out tonight, not to pick winners and losers. This is a great project. I think the lasting benefits far outweigh the short-term inconveniences, and I am in full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Durham, and then Councilwoman Whitehead and Councilwoman Janik. Councilmember Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't understand how this emergency provision is going to work, because looking at some of the pictures here, there are a number of parking spaces on the north side of First Avenue immediately adjacent to the project. And maybe I'm wrong, but I can't imagine how cars could be parked in these spots on the north side of First Avenue that are immediately adjacent to where the project and the construction is going to be. And in some of the pictures we've seen, there are cranes beside the project that are sort of parked on the street, parked in what appears to be parking spaces on the street. And I'm sure that, I imagine that would be necessary in this project. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know that that's an emergency. If you've got to park a crane in what would be one of these parking spaces on the north side of the street, I can't see how that would be an emergency. So unless I'm wrong in some of these issues, I think I would prefer to leave this to the discretion of the city. As was discussed, the city's responsible for keeping these right-of-ways open to the maximum extent possible. And I just think this emergency provision, unless I'm misunderstanding something here, I just think it's unworkable. And could you address that, Mr. Berry, on what the intention is of the parking along the north side of First Avenue there, adjacent to the project?
Mayor, Councilmember Durham, excuse me, if I could just highlight that construction mitigation plan is 3 pages of very small print and 2 graphics. But let me just use one of these graphics, which talks about phase 2. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. So what you will note, and it's hard to read, I apologize, is that the crane, unlike that other project on Main Street that Mr. Pejman showed the picture of, our crane will actually be interior to the site. So we won't have a crane on the exterior of the site. So the crane will be on the interior of the site. The construction mitigation plan, as stipulated and is in your packet, requires that we cannot close those parking spaces on First Avenue, on the north side or south side of First Avenue. In fact, what we must do is ensure that those parking spaces are not closed. We can't put lay-down materials or storage materials there. And given the location of the crane and this temporary delivery area off of Marshall Way, my client is very confident that they will not need to close any of those parking spaces anywhere on First Avenue, much less those on the north side. So every construction site is different. So the one you saw on Main Street with that photo, that's a very different parking site contextually than this. We have the advantage of being able to locate the crane on the interior of the site because we're building that underground parking structure. So the crane will be located there, and then it has the reach to be able to take the materials and deliver it on site without having to take up these parking spaces. So that has nothing to do with whether it's an emergency or not, but it just wanted to clarify the availability of those parking spaces on First Avenue, both north and south. The construction mitigation plan requires us to ensure that they stay open. Whether it's an emergency or not, that's your guys' conversation currently.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. If it's possible and feasible, and I know that's what the construction mitigation plan says, I was curious about how that was possible to have parked cars in such close proximity to a construction site. And if that's possible and feasible, and that's what the plan says, then I frankly don't see the need for the emergency provision because it's already covered in the construction mitigation plan. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Councilwoman Janik and then Councilwoman Whitehead.
What I wanted to speak on was the fact that I think the construction mitigation plan is necessary, and I believe it will facilitate the business owners who have a whole lot to lose if the streets are closed down, as we have seen with other businesses. And I applaud the people who work towards that construction mitigation plan, both Mr. Barry as well as the businessmen in the area. Now, I just want to make sure when Councilwoman Littlefield spoke, she further clarified that any hazardous situation could also be addressed. And I'm still a bit confused on where that is and what we're speaking about now. And I would hope that Sherry perhaps could clarify that a little bit more for me. Is there another part of this plan that talks about hazardous situations? Because for me, I don't want it to become an emergency. I want to deal with it as a hazardous situation where then there is a power to make adjustments to traffic and parking. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may answer her question, Sherry Scott, the construction mitigation plan is an exhibit to the development agreement, and it provides that the streets and the parking shall remain open. It says changes to this plan will only be made in accordance with section 6.10 of the development agreement. So when you look at 6.10, that is the language we're talking about. Do you want to keep it as it currently is, which gives the city the ability to make changes to the construction mitigation plan only if there's a health, safety, or other public interest concern that arises during construction? Or do you want to change it to allow that only in a true emergency? The amendment that you have on the floor is defining an emergency pursuant to Chapter 47, which is your streets, sidewalks, and public works chapter. And as Councilwoman Littlefield has previously read, it defines emergency to mean a sudden, unexpected event that may create an imminent risk of injury or death to any person or an imminent risk to public health or safety requiring an immediate response. So it does allow for some interpretation, but it has to be something unexpected that's imminent. It wouldn't allow for a closure, for instance, just for a traffic backup if motorists are honking and trying to figure out how to go. And I don't think that's an imminent risk to public health or safety requiring an immediate response. So where that tipping point is, there'll be a smaller amount of discretion than what's currently in the documents. And that's about as much specificity as I can give you on how we would implement that type of wording if the development agreement were to change.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilwoman Whitehead, then Councilwoman Littlefield. We do have a motion on the floor that we're going to vote on. So Councilwoman Whitehead, and then Littlefield.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased that there seems to be a lot of support for this great project up here on the dais. We never know going in, so I don't think there's any threat to this project getting approval, and that's really exciting for our downtown. So tweaking words is what we do to get things just right, and it's, I guess the phrase that comes to mind is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I guess I'm not comfortable with just the emergency. It seems to me, and I'm not looking at the legal definitions, that health and safety covers, similarly covers emergency and hazardous, which was what I had originally requested. And it seems to me that the phrase of concern is public interest. So I wonder, we want to make sure that we're not dealing with an emergency, but we're preventing an emergency. And the example that our city attorney keeps providing is an example of a safety issue. So if all of a sudden traffic is backing up, it seems to me we're going to open a road, but however that might close a road, that would fall under safety. So I would make an alternate motion. Well, I would like the city attorney to answer, is health and safety more or less emergency and hazardous?
Mayor, if I may answer her question.
Yes.
No, it's not. That's why we put in the documents to accommodate health, safety, or other public interests. That includes an emergency. Health, safety, or other public interest includes an emergency. An emergency doesn't include health, safety, or other public interest.
Got it. My question, I'm not comfortable with the word emergency, but the word that I had proposed in my initial remarks was hazardous, because a hazardous condition might be there's a gas line, so you want to clear off parking cars in the parking lot adjacent to where the gas line is being worked on. That's a hazardous condition. So to me, that also sounds like health and safety. So I guess I have stated that I don't support the emergency only change, and the words I was considering were I was going to substitute emergency and hazardous, but I feel comfortable that health and safety covers it if we removed public interest.
Well, in my ruling here, we have an amendment to what was presented to the public, and we can vote that up or down, and then whether that stays the same or the next motion carries. Now, you're asking to change a word, and I'm trying to clarify that we know what path we're on here. So I don't hear a motion. We do have one motion already as to how it's, if you're not comfortable with it, then you could let's say, vote no on that.
Well, I would like to make perhaps a friendly amendment for Councilwoman Littlefield to consider, and that would be to retain the health and safety but remove the public interest, knowing that health and safety cover both emergency and hazardous.
Okay, my whole point on this whole thing was to align the city's codes with each other. I think that would be fine. You know, the motion does not affect the terms of the contract itself in any way. This is strictly within the city and our own ordinance and our own terms for how we behave, not how the developer behaves. And its attempt to clearly define our own mitigation policy and put it into practice. And to put it into practice with our city's actions. So to the businesses that are going to be affected by this project for 3 years, they want assurance that they are going to be able to get to their businesses, that their clients are going to be able to get to their businesses, and without impediment. So the only reason that they wouldn't be is if there's a danger to health and safety. Now, you could take the word hazard out, but to me that just kind of defines health and safety in this. If there's a line that's blowing up, a gas line or something, that's hazardous to me, but it's also health and safety. So, either way you want to put it, that's fine. I believe it will help to alleviate the fears in many businesses right now that we're not going to be capricious. We're not going to do this just on a whim because we feel like it's a good day to close the streets. But this is a city action, and this is assurance to our businesses that are in that area, holding businesses and wanting their customers to come to their businesses, that we will not be capricious and that we will only do these kinds of actions if there's a true danger to them and to their businesses. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Well, do you accept that word change? Because then the second would have to, and I hear some misgivings, so again, do you want to accept that? And then it'll have to be reread. The definition of hazard also should be, so I'm going to call, you do accept it. Does the second accept it, Betty? I'm sorry, Councilman Janik. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to need to reread it, and so we're very clear on the action we're taking. City Attorney?
Yes, so the way I understand the amendment, the motion to amend, which was the subject of a friendly amendment, the relevant wording in section 6.10 of the development agreement will now read, the city manager or designee shall have the authority to make adjustments to the CMP, the Construction Mitigation Plan, as may be reasonably necessary to accommodate any health, safety concerns that may arise during construction, period. And the rest of that paragraph will remain unchanged in section 6.10 of the development agreement. Did I get that correctly? Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we have the revised amendment to what was published. As stated, there are 3 council people wanting to speak. Councilmember Milhaven, Councilwoman Littlefield, are you back? And then Whitehead. So I have Milhaven next.
Thank you. We've heard from the city attorney that she has significant concerns about modifying the language for this section. I don't know that it's our responsibility to wordsmith stuff. I think we would be well served to listen to the advice of the city attorney. I think the intention of all the parties here is to not close the road and to not close the parking. I mean, I think everybody's made that perfectly clear, and if I were the city manager, I'd think twice or 10 times before I went to close a parking space or to close this street, given the desires of the city council as well as the desires of the folks here in this room. So I don't think we're at risk of any capricious closings. But I do think we're at a risk if we are, according to the city attorney, narrowing what the city manager could do, because there may be unintended consequences. There may be something that may be in the public's best interest that would avoid a hazard or an emergency, and I don't think narrowing that is really in the best interest. So I'm going to make an alternate motion to adopt ordinance number 4535, adopt resolution 13926, and resolution 12397 as presented.
Second.
Well, it's my opinion that that's a base motion. I think there's an amendment we can vote on first because it was proposed as an amendment to what was published. The alternate motion would have to be significantly different than what has already been posted. It's not an alternate, it's a base motion. It's just, you could proceed after this happens. I think that, again, an alternate would be significantly similar. Well, it's a base motion to approve the case, and that's not an alternate motion. We have a motion to amend something. So that's my opinion, that we have an amendment. She proposed it as an amendment to it. And there has not been a basic motion made yet. So we were clarifying a certain provision in the motion. I see Councilmember Durham. I'm not saying we won't vote on the amendment. I'm just saying in order that it needs to be in order as it came forward. Councilmember Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm opposed to the amendment because this project is going to last for 3 years. There are any number of unforeseeable things that might happen that would require some closings, temporary, whatever, that might be in the public interest. We can't, sitting here today, we can't imagine what those might be over the next 3 years. As the city attorney has stated, we do have an obligation to keep the roads and open. And so I would rest on that, on our obligation to keep the roads open and on the discretion of the city government to determine when it might be necessary, because sitting right here, we can't predict what circumstances might arise. So I would want to leave that to the discretion of city management on whether or not a temporary closing might be necessary. Thank you.
So I call the question. That means we'll be voting on the amendment first. And
excuse me, I'd like to make a point of order.
You know, it's easier to do it this way, Linda, but you know, it doesn't mean okay. You want to question my point of order as to voting on this? I believe we should vote on the amendment, and therefore. A vote yes would allow the chair to vote in order of the amendment. And a vote no would say the amendment would not be valid, I guess, until after the main motion. Because we're going to vote on the amendment one way or the other. It's still an amendment. A yes would allow the order of things to be voted on.
If I could clarify. So we have an amended motion on the floor, and we have an alternate motion on the floor. And a rules of procedure call to vote on the second motion before we vote on the first motion.
Okay, then it will go down because it's
Sure,
not been
fine.
clarified, because the vote on we've had an hour discussion on an amendment, and it's still a valid amendment. Now, the chair has been questioned. I believe that the amendment should be voted on, up or down, however it goes. And if you agree, then vote yes. Register your vote.
Can you explain that again one more time? Sorry.
Well, she's questioning my judgment about whether or not, and I am saying that we have to vote on an amendment. It was not a base amendment, and the question is substitute or alternate motion. Go ahead, City Attorney.
Mayor, thank you. I think the confusion here is the motion started out as a motion to amend, and then it became a friendly amendment. But it's still a motion to amend that needs to be voted on. And Councilwoman Milhaven is absolutely correct that it's last in, first out. But I do believe, because there is a motion to amend, so we know what the two motions on the floor are, that it would be appropriate for council to vote on the motion to amend, and then it would be, if that motion is amended, then it will go to Councilwoman Milhaven's motion, which is an alternative motion, and then if that fails, then you would vote on the motion to amend. I'm sorry, the amended motion.
Thank you. To be clear, voting on the amendment, which had a friendly change.
You don't vote on a friendly amendment.
Register your vote.
Oh, wait a minute. What are we voting on again?
Yes.
Okay.
Betty voted yes, and I vote. No. So the amendment did not pass, and we are now having a motion to approve the case as presented and stated, with flexibility for the city manager to handle the unforeseeable future. However, I will speak to the motion, and including several questions that I have. First of all, so the motion on the table is really a base motion to approve the project. There's many things to like about this project, and there's several things that I object to. First of all, the open space and that requirement is a positive, but it's also the rite of passage when you upzone. When you upzone, we expect some open space. We expect open space on the corners. It's also part of the architectural guidelines. It's useful, and it's not a give me, and then certainly if a project had no open space, it wouldn't be approved from my end. The second fact is that we are in the process of retooling the Old Town Character Area Plan. I think the guidelines that are set, also architectural guidelines, have to be consistent with the project. And so certain things can be learned, lessons learned project by project. The three questions I have, first of all, relate to the percent of mixed use. And less than 1% of a so-called mixed-use project doesn't work. I can't support a project which is not truly mixed use. And I'm saying that because I believe that the client or the applicant said that there's maybe 14 or 15 extra spaces in this project, which sounds good. I think that should be for commercial space. There's, I think, 10 or 15 spaces that are surplus spaces, but I don't believe it's ideal to have people's patio right there along Indian School, and that's an opportunity lost in terms of having a true mixed use. So I think that the extra spaces, so-called overparked, should be in the commercial sector. I know that they have a small use for an office. The other thing that I have Mr. Berry up and the architect too. So if you look at the west elevation of both buildings, you'll see that they have a zero lot line, okay? Zero lot line abutting Mr. Miller's property and abutting the coach house property. And when you go and build a building that's 40 feet down into a hole, you cannot build on a zero lot line. Now, there is a view of that west view, of the west end of the building. Maybe we can find it and put it up. It shows balconies and some glass on the zero lot line. That doesn't mean code. It means that you have to have respect. That's some form of mitigation, I guess, to the adjoining property. And essentially, during construction, you couldn't fence that area off without invading or going on to the adjoining property if you want to build to zero lot line. So part of what we're seeing tonight is an upzoning with a lot of good considerations, but it has two weak points: the west side of both those buildings, and one of them shows glass, and I know it may be conceptual, but nevertheless, it's zero lot line. Essentially, if somebody put their car in drive instead of reverse parking at the coach house, they'd end up in the hole. Doesn't work. That building needs to be at least 5 or 10 feet back from the property line just to build it, just to be able to build and go down and excavate. And so that is a deficiency in that building that is in type 2. And then if you look at the building also, which is where the parking garage is, on First, it also is at zero lot line with windows showing on the west, which you can't do. And again, you'd be building on somebody, it just physically can't be done. There has to be either a respectable space there, or you're going to put the building in jeopardy next door. That's a hazard. That's a known hazard that's going to happen. So in that respect, I think I cannot approve the site plan that's presented. It's a beautiful building, but it doesn't have, and it could be zoned all the way to the lot, zero property line, but it's not going to, I can't approve it that way. It's kind of like ethically something you don't do. You have to have some space, and they even showed some balconies. The tandem parking that's down in the basement, our council approved that. I suggested it. That allows the two bedroom to have one parking space in tandem parking. That was a saver. It made it better for you all to provide two bedroom units. I thought that was really good. The suggestion that I have, again, is that it's not meeting the mixed use. If we kept doing this, we're going to eat up commercial space, especially on Indian School. It looks like you have a parking on the back side of that building along Indian School that really should be for commercial purposes before it gets to be less than 1% is commercial, and they call that, mixed use. Therefore, when you start converting all these C2 properties, a minimum would be, I've asked for 20% the ground floor. I really think the ground floor should be commercial and let the other happen above it. So it would set a bad precedent for me to approve something when I know that the intent of the architectural guidelines and our true mixed use has to have some compatible commerce to it. You don't want people walking around there and seeing someone with a TV as you're out there walking and shopping or whatever. It's just not comfortable, and it breaks the rules. I don't see any other comments on the motion. I'm not hearing, is your client at all interested in moving back so that actually this can be built? Because I think that's the greatest hazard to this project.
Mayor Ortega, members of the council, I have to just pause for a second and note that there are numerous buildings throughout the city, not just in Scottsdale, but around the valley and around the country where, and I'm not an engineer or a structural engineer, that build on a zero lot line and find a way to ensure that the adjacent property owner and the work site are safe. We do have a letter from Paul Kohler, who's PK Structural Engineering, that's been around forever, has offices around the country, who, in great engineering detail, which I won't bore you with, I'd be happy to put the letter up if you'd like, that describes a couple of methods to be able to do that, one of which was in fact used by the city out here at the construction of the bridge over the reconstruction of the bridge out in front of City Hall, connecting the Civic Center Plaza. So I appreciate your experience very much as an architect and your involvement in many of these very complex projects around the valley and the country. But the information that certainly our client has garnered from their structural engineers and folks that engage in this around the country is that it certainly is possible to do this. The other ip, so the short answer is our client is confident that we can. If for some reason we can't do it safely without hazard, then we won't do it. The city won't let us do it. So they've got to permit it, and this is not the first time they've dealt with underground parking or a structure above an underground parking on a zero lot line. So I very much honor and respect what you're saying, and if we can't do it, for goodness sakes, we won't.
I see any other comment from Ms. Janik? There's no other questions for Mr. Berry, so you can sit down. So we have a motion. Anyone else want to speak to the motion? I think many prepared statements were made. Otherwise, let's, we have a motion and a second, and in particular for all the attendant development agreement and so forth for case 5A, please register your vote. Okay. And
this is Councilwoman Janik. I'm a yes.
Okay, great. 5-2 passes. Congratulations. Good luck with your project. Next, we will go to item number 6, Compensated Conservation Agreement. Presenter Brian Biesmeyer, Water Resources Executive Director, will make his presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Brian Biesmeyer, Executive Director for Scottsdale Water, and I have a short presentation to you tonight on a compensated conservation agreement. You just received an update on the drought scenario and situation on the Colorado River. This plan was a result of earlier information about the drought that occurred in the fall of last year. And it resulted in concerns for Lake Mead, not Lake Powell, as Gretchen talked about earlier about some concerns that the Department of Interior had with Lake Powell. This plan was devised specifically around Lake Mead, and there is a provision in the Drought Contingency Plan adopted in 2019 that would allow the Department of Interior to take action should the lake level look like it would be declining to below 1020, which was similar to the discussion on Lake Powell, would be where electricity generation could come into concern. So this plan is designed to mitigate those facts. So the 3 lower basin states, along with the Department of Interior, Bureau of Reclamation, got together and looked at what could be done to protect the lake from declining below 1020. So the thought was, how can we, the Department of Interior does a number of forecasts every year, and we've talked about their 24-month study in April and then in August. They do a number of these forecasts, and so the plan was devised on how can we look at these forecasts over the time of the DCP, so they're going out to 2027, and how can we mitigate the lake going below 1020. And the question was posed, what amount of water behind Lake Mead would allow this so that it doesn't go below 1020 at the 90th percentile? So we have a 90%. So 90% of all the forecasts done would be above 1020. Some might, there's a small 10% chance that they could go below, but what is that 90th percentile or 10% that is shown here? So it's really 90% of all the forecasts. And so that number came out to be 500,000 acre feet saved behind Lake Mead. Then the question is, how do we do that? So if we need to keep another 500,000 acre-feet behind Lake Mead, in addition to the tier shortages, in addition to that, 500,000 acre-feet every year, how do we go about that? So to do that, the lower basin states, being Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, as well as the United States, came up with this plan. And the plan would be to ask for savings from the states, as you see in the pie-shaped amount, as well as the United States. Now, Nevada is not in there, but Nevada is also paying money to help with this conservation, because the plan behind the conservation is to have voluntary, temporary, compensated savings. So folks willing to keep water behind the dam would be compensated for that amount of water that they keep behind the dam. And the compensation would be $261.60 per acre foot for any savings behind that dam. On the Arizona side, you can see how that allocation came up through requests for voluntary savings. So Scottsdale would come under the CAP subcontractors, which you can see is a 50 to 60,000 acre-foot savings. In Scottsdale, we've always had the approach that we wanted to be part of the solution and part of the solution with our neighbors and others in Arizona. And we have a long history of doing that. So within the participating subcontractors, you can see our recommended contribution is 1,889 acre-feet. Now, this is the remaining portion of our non-Indian ag water, and this is only for 2022. Should we become under a higher tier cut in 2023, there'd have to be, in 2023, there'll be a brand new contract coming forward. This is only 2022. And so we're talking about 1,889 acre-feet that we would normally recharge. And in this case, we'd keep the water behind Lake Mead. The benefit to our ratepayers is it's compensated. And so it would be funding coming back to us. And I'll go back. That funding would be approximately $500,000 in savings back to the Scottsdale water, and then would diminish some of that cost that the mayor mentioned, how our rates are continuing to go up, would diminish that for 2022. Now, another contract will come up in 2023. The state and CAP will ask for voluntary contributions. Again, that's going to be an annual process that we would go through, and should we recommend something, we'd be back to you with that recommendation for 2023. This is only for 2022. But again, as being part of the solution and getting that compensation back for our ratepayers, staff is recommending the adoption of resolution number 12457. Pending your questions.
Thank you. I see no hands. Is there a Councilmember Durham?
Thank you, Mayor. Are we going to get the missing 1889 from someone else or another source, or are we just going to, I mean, you've shown that there is a bit of a surplus, so we're just going to go without that 1889 acre-feet?
Councilman Durham, that would be 1889 that we would normally recharge in our own aquifer here, and we will just not recharge that this year.
Okay, thank you.
Good. I see no other hands. With that, I move that we adopt Resolution 12457, approving contract number 2022-052 COS, the Compensated Conservation Agreement between the State of Arizona, the United States, and the Central Arizona Project Water Conservation District, and the City of Scottsdale to conserve a portion of Scottsdale CAP water in Lake Mead calendar year 2022 in exchange for compensation.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Please indicate your vote.
This is Councilwoman Janik. I'm also a yes.
Thank you, unanimous. Moving on to item number 7, which has to do with the real estate sale agreement to dispose of surplus property, and the presenter is Dan Worth, Public Works Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Dan Worth, Public Works Director. I know it's a long meeting, and I am the third presentation that you're getting tonight from an engineer, which makes it especially difficult, I'm sure. But I think I can be brief. I am here to talk about the possible sale of city property. This is a parcel that we offered at auction in March. We received a single bid. Our task tonight is to decide whether we're going to accept or reject that single bid. This is the property, 37.5 acres, located east of 94th Street, north of Bell Road. You can see the properties that adjoin it: DC Ranch to the north, Wingate Ranch to the east, a condo multifamily complex and city-owned property that supports Westworld to the south. And although it doesn't look like it, the parcel to the west is our brand new sports fields that we are just completing construction on. You can see the on the bullets the value of the property. We acquired it in 2005 at auction from the Arizona State Land Department for $24 million. We got an appraisal a little over a year ago. It appraised at that time at $28.5 million. The total cost of ownership, what we paid for it, and then what we are paying in interest associated with the bonds that we issued for the purchase, adds up to 42.7. We chose that as the opening bid for the auction. As I mentioned, we did get a valid bid at the auction, and then you can see the zoning in the bullet, and also I've highlighted it on the slide. Our parcel is zoned R17, as is the parcel to the north, the parcel to the east, the parcel to the west, and then to the south it's multifamily and Western theme park. This is the process that we followed. We published an invitation to bid in November of last year. The invitation to bid contained no use restrictions. It is as is. And we advertised it at an opening bid of $42.7 million. Again, that relates to the number on the previous slide. On March 16th, we had our live auction. We had a single bidder, Mr. Michael Graham, American First Home Builders, who I understand is here with us today. He bid the $42.7 million amount. Tonight, we are here to either approve or reject the bid. And if council approves the bid, then we are on track to close per the bid documents in early June. And the last thing I wanted to point out is just give you some additional context. These are 4 large land sales that have happened in the same area in the central part of the city over the last 2 years, moving from the west, the left side of the graphic. The first parcel on the south side of the freeway west of Hayden Road is a parcel of state land sold at auction about 3 weeks ago. You can see the value that went for, a little over $600,000 an acre. The parcel adjacent to it to the east is the Axon purchase from September of 2020 at a similar price per acre. The parcel, the next one to the east on the north side of Bell Road, east of the freeway, went for auction the week before our auction at about $980 per acre. And then our parcel, the auction price on a per acre basis equates to about $1.14 million per acre. And I would also point out that the 3 state land parcels are all either PCD or I-1 PCD, as opposed to our 1.7 for our parcel, and the 3 state land parcels all have freeway frontage. I think that can give you a fairly good idea of whether that's a good bid, a good amount for our parcel. And with that, my briefing is concluded. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Millhaven and Councilwoman Littlefield.
I am not supportive of this sale. In the work study that we interrupted, that we were going to have at the beginning, but that we're going to finish at the end, we're going to talk about putting together a citizen group to consider extending the sales tax. The preserved sales tax expires in '95, and we're going to contemplate bringing together a citizen group to discuss, if we were to extend that tax, what we might want to use that money for. And I think that's an exciting conversation to have. What's the next big idea we're going to do in Scottsdale? Is it, you know, is it another greenbelt project? Is it another preserve? What's the next big idea? And if we're going to launch into that conversation about what's the next big idea, selling property where that might get situated seems to be a little hasty. You know, we can always sell this property later if we don't have a use that comes out of that. But what I imagine, you know, what if the citizens were to say, yeah, we want a bigger theater located up north, or the McDowell-Sonoran Conservancy could use permanent office space, and classroom space, or exhibit space, or you know, even with the new soccer fields, we still get emails about we don't have enough sports fields for folks. And so I'm really reluctant to sell this property when we may, in another year or two, have a really good use for it. We can always sell it later. I think some of my colleagues may assert that we're saving money if we were to sell this. We're not saving money if we sell it. We are simply liquidating an asset, just like if we were to sell any other park or city-owned building. So we're not going to be saving any money. We're going to be liquidating an asset. So. And I'm also kind of excited about this conversation about what we would do when we expand the tax. You know, my time on council, we had a hard time meeting basic infrastructure needs. So we finally got a transportation sales tax passed to take care of our roads, and we got a bond passed to take care of our basic infrastructure. And I think the timing is right for us to think about what the next really fun, great community amenity might be. So I'm going to make a motion that we reject resolution number 12460. Okay, there you have it.
Okay, there's silence. That motion dies for a second. I will move for approval of, to accept the sale of the property, resolution 12460, authorizing the sale of city property in the amount of $42,700,000 under purchase and sale agreement contract 2022-055-COS.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion, a second. Let me just mention a few things. Part of this evening has been mentioning the general plan. And the general plan has land use element, and this property is part of that land use element. It's also covering a lot of cultural aspects. It's covering the preserve, where the city already owns over 53 square miles of open space, and that's a beautiful thing. Every single chapter in here has a purpose, and I don't see having a large performance center with 2,000 or 3,000 people and headlights exiting at 11 o'clock at night as a suitable purpose for that property. I think the sale of the property is exquisite. You found a good, we found a worthy buyer. It's away from the freeway, which is important, and I think that's why it is also, to me, represents a neighborhood, and it represents a place where there will be dedicated open space and so forth, just to make it very desirable, where people can meet each other. And I hope they don't make it an STR neighborhood. I can tell you that pretty directly. And yet at the same time, our council will be exploring another issue, whether we'll do it tonight, which we do have a split work study for that. I'm also very interested, or I would point out on the overhead, that the city bought 10 acres right next to Westworld. 10 acres. Westworld is the main event center for Scottsdale, and there's potential there for some things on site with all that parking. And in spite of having 541 events at Westworld, the city still lost almost $5 million. So having another venue with a lot of expense and overhead is just not the direction I want to go when we're investing so much here in our very vicinity. That's just my opinion. We have a motion and a second. I also have comment from Vice Mayor Caputi, Councilwoman Littlefield.
Just a couple comments. I actually was pretty conflicted with this because I like the idea of trying to think a little bit bigger. It was, as I mentioned earlier, it was a little shocking to me that the council just wanted to sell to the first bidder at the minimum amount and build houses. That seemed a little ironic to me, but we do need housing. And again, I struggled with this a little bit because I do like the idea of not just plunking down housing, but actually thinking a little bit bigger and trying to do something great. But we did have an original 80 acres up here, and we've used 40 for municipal use. And so I suppose the fiscally responsible decision would be to put the additional 40 to good use. The market's at an all-time high, as has been mentioned, and it's probably a decent time to sell and make the residents whole. And I just want to throw out the additional comment that it doesn't really make sense, I guess, to keep a valuable piece of public property from generating economic value. I think that our job as city council members is to make sure that we always generate economic value for our citizens. And I think we need to be super thoughtful and strategic with our taxpayer money. We should always aim to maximize value for our residents. And I just think that when we make decisions in our city, I think, again, I'm going to use the word ironic. When we look at the area that we have downtown, the most valuable area along the canal, and we're actually doing the exact opposite, taking it off from having economic value to the citizens and leaving it doing nothing, it seems a little inconsistent to me. But since I do support using valuable land in strategic ways, I think at the end of the day, I would have to agree that we should probably sell the additional 40. Thank you.
Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that we need to sell this land. We've owned it for many, many years. We bought it very high in price. We've been paying interest on it for a long, long time. We bought it at 80 acres. The other 40 we have developed into the fields and the sports fields that we currently have and are using. This 40 acres is still sitting there. We're still paying on it. And we can basically get our money back if we accept this offer and give it to someone who can build on it and maybe has ideas on how to make something really special there. So I think I will support this. We've owned it for years. We've not done anything with it all of this time. And I think it's time to move on. So I definitely support the motion to sell it. While the market is high, we can get a price that we want. We can get the money back that the city has paid for it and the citizens have paid for it. And we can take that money and maybe use it for something more spectacular. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other hands. We have a motion and a second. Please register your vote.
Councilwoman Janik is a yes.
So it is passed 6-1. Thank you very much. Good luck with your purchase. Next, we will move to item number 8. Item number 8 is the quarterly financial and capital improvement plan, CIP, update presentation. And at this point, if we could get staff to come forward, or will you handle it there? Thank you, Treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a really brief quarterly financial update. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the key points for this quarter update is that the sales tax revenues still continue to outperform with consumer spending. Overall, our general fund revenues are above our budget, and overall, our general fund expenditures are within our budget. Next slide. And this chart just shows our 12-month rolling local sales tax revenues in the general fund, and it continues to show a very strong positive trend. Next slide. Our general fund local sales tax is up year-to-date by 25% from the prior year, driven by retail and our dining and entertainment categories. It's also $21.6 million above our budget. Next slide. In total, our general fund revenues are up 22% from prior year and $48.8 million above our budget, again driven by local sales tax, and the other category is some land sales that we recognized this quarter. Next slide. And as far as general fund uses, the differences are simply timing and normal operating variances. Next slide. And likewise with the by division as well. And that ends the quarterly update for my part, and I'll turn it over to our city engineer.
Okay, thank you. My name is Allison Timke, City Engineer, and I'm here to present the quarterly update, quarter 3 of the CIP. Wrong way. Okay, so first I'm going to highlight the bond 2019. I'm going to go over the three questions of the bond, highlighting the status of the projects that are funded currently, and then I'm going to highlight specifically 1 or 2 projects from each question. After that, I'll go over some projects that are in design that are non-bond funded, and then I'll go over some projects under construction that are non-bond funded. Okay, question 1. One more. Question 1 is Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services. This slide shows the status of the current projects that are currently funded in the fiscal year 21-22. I'm going to highlight 2 projects. 53, which is build the multi-use sports fields in the area of Bell Road, and 42, which is add a dog park to Thompson Peak Park. Okay, so build the multi-use sports fields in the area of Bell Road. This is a 2-phase project. The phase 1 is almost complete. That's the Bell Road Sports Complex. Currently, we are finalizing the facilities there, and they're scheduled to be done in June. The field's already done. It's just the support facilities that are under construction. Sorry, the first picture shows that. The next phase is the Westworld Sports Complex, and currently that is under construction doing grading. You can see that in the lower picture. And we have recently gone to council with the GMP2 that was approved at the April 26th council agenda. GMP2 is including the parking lots, the construction of the fields, landscaping, hardscape, et cetera, lighting. And then later we'll go for a GMP3, which will finalize the restroom and the office building at that location. The entire project is set to finish in the winter of 2023. The next project, 42, is add a dog park to the Thompson Peak Park. This project includes construction of approximately 3.5 acres of off-leash developed turf area. Each area will be separately fenced and gated, and then there will be a footbridge to the existing amenities at Thompson Peak Park. The existing amenities at that park include lighted sports fields, covered playground, and open turf area. This project will also include approximately 100 new parking spaces for the dog park. We recently selected the architect, and that was awarded March 29th at the City Council meeting. The bond fund for this is around $4.6 million, and construction is funded in fiscal year 24-25. Okay, the next question, question 2. Is community spaces and infrastructure. And for this, I will highlight the first one, which we all know is the Civic Center Plaza project. And then I'll also highlight the repair, the lakes irrigation at Vista del Camino Park in the Indian Bend Wash. So here's a photo of the current construction progress at the Civic Center Plaza, and this project is to provide better pedestrian flow and permanent performance areas. The current construction is focusing on storm drains, water and sewer, which are nearing completion, and irrigation is in progress. Additionally, we have critical path electrical work, which is forthcoming, which includes electrical to the west lawn, the 360-degree performance structure. The planter and retaining walls on the west entry are also in progress. And then this project has a total bond funding of $22 million. And on March 1st, the GMP 3 was awarded, which included finalizing all the AV and lighting for the stages. And the next project, 23, repair lakes and irrigation at Vista del Camino Park in the Indian Bend Wash. This is to repair failing lakes and irrigation from McKellips to Thomas. And the first phase is what you can see here. It's mostly irrigation work. This area is from Murray Lane to McDowell, phase 1, and that's at about 60% design. Phase 2 is proceeding with design as well, and we've just selected the CMAR for this project, and we will bring that contract for pre-construction phase services next council meeting on May 17th for consideration of award. Okay, we have 2 slides for public safety and technology, which is question 3. And for these projects, we have several of them that will be probably wrapping up completion, a lot of the automation projects like 5, 7, and 11 within the next 2 or 3 updates. And I'm going to highlight project number 9, which is install the fiber optic infrastructure to reduce operating costs at multiple locations. This is a continuation of question 3. You can see on here some projects that we've already highlighted to you in the past, including the police and fire training facility. That's currently progressing at 60% design, actually. A portion of it is at 30% design, and the fire station is at 60% design, and we're going through the City of Tempe zoning process currently. And then also we have 40, which is the jail and downtown police facility. The architect has been selected, and that design is also commencing. And so number 9 is install the fiber optic infrastructure to reduce operating costs. This is throughout the city to meet the need for network bandwidth to support business operations and reduce dependency on leased communication lines. We've completed several locations. We recently just completed McCormick Stillman Railroad Park and Fire Station 603, and then we're working to start at the airport and Gainey Ranch water treatment plant. Has an $11 million bond fund, which is spread over 4 years. Then we have a list of the completed projects. So we've done court resurfacing and sports lighting at several facilities. We've also completed several projects at Westworld, and we've done a lot of the emergency response and emergency power source projects. And now I'm going to highlight some non-bond funded projects that are currently in design. First, I have the public restroom replacements at several of our city parks. The design commencement is forthcoming. We have selected an architect, Kimley Horn, and we are also soliciting for a CMAR, and construction will begin probably in early 2023. Then we have Pima Road, Dynamite Boulevard to Las Piedras. This is to build a minor arterial complete street section, including landscape median and bike lanes, sidewalks, and trails, and eliminate low-flow crossings. This is an ALCP, Arterial Life Cycle Program funded project, and the design contract was awarded to Michael Baker, and construction is anticipated to start in 2024. And then other projects in construction, we have another project right down the street here, the Osborne Road Complete Street, which is the construction of bicycle lanes and sidewalks segments along Osborne from Hayden to Scottsdale Road. It also includes a connection to the Indian Bend Wash Path and a roundabout at Miller and Osborne. So construction just started. The notice to proceed was April 11th, and we we're planning to be completed early 2023. And then the final project is the aquifer storage and recovery wells. These are the deep well recharge and recovery facilities for the long-term sustainability of our drinking water. And we have 4 sites with the associated pipelines that go to the water campus. We're currently working on equipping the one site at Miller and Deer Valley that was already drilled. And then the second site at Legacy and Miller, the drilling is complete, and we're preparing our planning submittals for the equipping of that site. And then we have well 161, which is actually at the Scottsdale Sports Complex, and the drilling is underway and should be completed in July. And then our final location is at the Hayden and Mayo site, which is the Axon. And we're hoping to be able to get onto that site in August or September to begin drilling there. And that's all I have, so any questions?
Good, I'll lead off first of all. Thank you very much.
Sure.
You're multifaceted, and that's great. My first question is for Treasurer Andrews. So we took an action on item 7 to sell a property, $42.7 million. Can you just explain how that books when it closes somewhere around June? Because we already are in the budget process. So just fill me in on the next steps or how it fits into the budget.
Yes, Mayor, Council. When we sell the piece of property and receive the $42.7 million, even though we have not included in the proposed budget that will be coming before you, we do have enough contingency if we have identified a project to spend the money on. There are restrictions on the proceeds, and it will take our bond counsel and tax attorneys some time to figure out and calculate what those restrictions are. So in the meantime, we will be putting it in a special fund so that it's restricted and reserved until the bond counsel and our tax attorneys can calculate the restrictions on that money.
Good. Now, this second question relates to you both because, you know, at this point, we have a commitment to the voters. It's the bond 2019. It's in excess of, you know, $319 million. It's very significant citywide. And as Treasurer mentioned, there may be some cost overages and this construction that's going on. We are committed to do that. We are committed to do every one of those projects. And whatever money that had been tied up in the land can now be effectively put into other projects. They become assets to our city. In particular, I do want to, so that's $42.7 million. Whether 10 million is restricted or 12 or whatever it is, we're still going to get the bulk of that, probably return to the general fund and somehow we'll make decisions on that piece by piece, I guess. Is that correct as a council? Or?
Mayor and council, absolutely. Once we have the calculations done and know exactly what is restricted and how we can apply the proceeds accordingly, we will bring that back to council.
Good. Now, one of the bond projects that I do favor, and it is the item number 42. That is the dog park at Thompson Peak. It is an important infrastructure. You know, dogs and pets kept us going through COVID. It's part of the bond-approved project, and I definitely want to see how that can be moved forward in construction. Having a 1 or 2 year delay in between design we may as well, these costs are going to continue to escalate. It's relatively small, and I'm giving you my 2 cents on that. The other thing that we were covering in this discussion is how important water is. and where the aquifers are available further into Scottsdale is great, and they're along the 101. We have that advantage to store water underground versus having to build above ground containers, I guess. Some cities have really a problem with their water table and what they're dealing with, but we have that. I do want to, one of the discussion points that we had about water with Mr. Biesmeyer was how we might look at advancing maybe our 5-year horizon for pumping water from the high growth area of Old Town to the recycling point. I do consider that we do have a urgency to it. We are not Pollyanna. We can't dance along and think that we're above the water shortage. We have to take action. And I'd like you to as I mentioned to Mr. Biesmeyer, look at worst case scenario, and I'm sure you will, and this is one reason why when we can provide infrastructure that ends up conserving water and cleansing it and then reusing it, then that's worth gold. It's worth many times its value. That's really how we, as a city, make infrastructure, pay back. So we will expect in August the master plan, but I am suggesting that we look at advancing some of the design or concepts because of the shortage of the Colorado. Again, the Colorado provides 76% of our water. If in 2 years things don't improve, and the trend is not our friend on this. So I'm glad that we have some resources, and we'll make those decisions step by step. I see Councilwoman Whitehead, and for the record, at this point, this is just a report. It's not an action. That's correct. So, any comments we have will be useful. Councilwoman Whitehead.
And Mayor Ortega, I'm sorry for the interruption. We also have a hand raised from Councilwoman Janik.
Oh, excuse me. Great. Thank you. Let's go to Councilwoman Janik first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a quick question for our city engineer, Allison. Can you just tell me what the current structure of that road at Pima is? I think Pima and Dynamite, it was on one of your slides that we're going to make wider. I was just curious what the existing surface is.
Councilwoman Janik and members of the council, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question. Can you repeat it?
Sure. You had a slide that showed a diagram of improving the road from Pima and Dynamite, I believe is where you started. I just wanted to know what do we currently have there?
Yeah, we currently have that there. What we're doing with this project is we are improving the landscape medians, we are improving the sidewalks, we are improving the trails on each side of the road, bike lanes as well, and we are eliminating the low flow crossings. I mean the wet crossings, so the roads won't get flooded with the storms and prevent crossing.
Okay, and is it 1 lane each direction then for car traffic?
It's 2 lanes for most of that stretch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, Councilwoman Whitehead.
I was just going to congratulate Ms. Timke and welcome her to the Kiva. So congratulations on being the new city engineer.
Thank you, Councilwoman Whitehead.
Okay, I also, just for the record, I open public comment when we have this discussion, and I see none, so accordingly I will close public comment. This is all part of a due diligence that we do as we look at how the city builds wisely and responds swiftly to our needs. Thank you. We're concluded with that item. We'll go on to item number 9. Item number 9 is the public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant CDBG program for the fiscal year 2022-23, the annual action plan, the allocation of CDBG funds, and the 4th substantial amendment to the year 2019-2020 annual action plan. So thank you. Please present.
Good evening, Mayor Ortega, members of the council. My name is Mary Witkowski, and I'm coming before you tonight representing the Community Assistance Office. This is the time set aside for a public hearing for our fiscal year 22-23 CDBG Annual Action Plan, allocating our CDBG funds, along with the fourth substantial amendment to the fiscal year 2019-2020 Annual Action Plan. The Community Development Block Grant was designed to reinforce, I don't know how to move the slides. The Community Development Block Grant was designed to reinforce several important values and principles of community development. Flexibility that empowers people and communities to design and implement strategies tailored to their own needs and priorities. This program's emphasis is on our consolidated planning. It expands and strengthens our partnerships among all levels of government and the private sector in enhancing our community. Technical assistance activities and set-asides for grantees builds the capacity for our partners. This is a non-competitive grant that is given to cities with populations over 50,000. Eligible expenditures include public services, housing activities, public facilities, economic development. A minimum of 70% of our funds must be used to benefit low and moderate income Scottsdale households. Expenditures must be consistent with the 5-year consolidated plan, which was adopted by this council in 2020. The fourth substantial amendment. Scottsdale received an annual allocation of $2.5 million in 2020 through the Community Development Block Grant through our CARES funds to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. We are requesting to reallocate an estimated $394,000 to supportive services to further affordable housing and homelessness here in Scottsdale. Supportive services is defined by HUD as services that assist a client in the transition from the streets or shelters into permanent or permanent supportive housing that assists them to live successfully in housing. This reallocation removes original projects of enhancing the Paiute Park Neighborhood Center through a ramada, a campus bus trolley stop, and the addition of a park course, along with reprogramming unspent funds in the temporary homeless hotel and our day relief centers, as well as portable AC units to better address the housing crisis needs here in Scottsdale through supportive services. So for our fiscal year 22-23 Annual Action Plan public process, HUD requires us to come before you for accepting these funds. On March of 2020, the Human Services Commission discussed the funding and informal funding recommendations. Also in March, on the 24th, the Human Services Commission made formal funding recommendations that are being brought forth to you tonight. We are required to hold a public hearing and submit our annual action plan to Housing and Urban Development. These funding allocations would become effective as of July 1st of 2022. This year-long process, or this year's process, we have an estimated, and please note this isn't only an estimated amount, as the city is still waiting to receive the allocation amounts from Housing and Urban Development. We are estimating to receive $1.1 million in our fiscal year 22-23 allocation. We have approximately $79,000 remaining in our program income and reprogram funds, giving us an estimated amount available for programming at $1.19 million. Some award recommendations that came forward is $894,582 for programs and services, $239,614 for our planning and administration, with a total recommendation of award of $1.1 million. This leaves us a balance of $63,000 to reprogram in fiscal year 23-24. The recommendations coming before you for public services is approximately $167,000. Those public services include youth, domestic violence victims, seniors, disabled, homelessness, and crime prevention with our Scottsdale Police Department. For our non-public service programs, we have our housing and rehabilitation programs, our green housing rehab, our emergency repairs, and our roof and replacements at $276,000. And we have a facility improvement project at a $450,000. Our street, this is a street project, will be a pavement and reconstruction along with ADA upgrades to serve low and moderate income families living in the neighborhoods of Cox Heights and Pima Meadows. The streets to be reconstructed are Holly Street, 87th Place, Cypress Street, Monte Vista Road, and Diana Drive. Approximately 7,300 Scottsdale residences are located within this low-moderate area benefit, and over 44% of the residents in this area are at or below 80% of median income. The remaining amount of funds will be designated toward program administration to operate the program. So today we seek your adoption and approval of Resolution 12451 to approve the fiscal year 22-23 annual action plan and the fourth substantial amendment to the fiscal year 2019-2020 annual action plan, and authorize the use and award of the allocation of our CDBG funds for eligible programs and services. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. At this point, and we are required to have a public comment on this hearing. So just for the record, I am opening for public comment. I see none, so therefore I will close public comment. The one observation I had, it seemed to say that there was a little slack of 68 or 69,000 that might be applied for the next year or this coming year.
Mayor Ortega, council members, that is correct. There's approximately $63,000 in reprogram funds that we would designate in fiscal year 23-24.
Okay, and you know, with that, I would move for approval to adopt resolution number 12451 to approve the FY 2022-23 annual action plan and the fourth substantial amendment to FY 2019-2020 annual action plan, and authorize the use, award, and allocation of CDBG funds for eligible programs and services and associated contracts, reprogramming of prior year's remaining funds, and the return of program income. Mayor, city manager, and community assistance manager to take certain actions furthering this resolution.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please register your vote.
Councilwoman Janik is a yes.
Okay, unanimous. Thank you. At this point, we are moving on to our item number 10 as shown, which would be a citizen, at this point, we have the opportunity to open for public comment. Citizens from the community to come forward if there was something that was not on the agenda, and they could make public comment. Is there something I needed to do, Rommel? Okay, good. Sorry. I do recognize you with that mask on. Thank you. Okay, so accordingly, I do not see any public comment. Second opportunity, going once, and I close the public comment. Moving on to citizen petitions, that's always posted according to our charter, and it allows citizens to come forward, submit a petition. I see none. None was registered with the clerk, so I will close that item. Moving on to mayor and council items. Is any comment? And I will ask Councilwoman Janik, because of course you are here, but did you have any comment?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much. Accordingly, I'll close item number 11. That was the mayor and council items. The next one is item 12, boards and commissions and task force nominations. At this point, we're only doing nominations for several openings. I will now turn the meeting over to Vice Mayor Caputi for the boards, commissions, and task force nominations.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see if I can speed through this. I'm getting really good at it. This evening, the City Council will be nominating Scottsdale residents interested in serving on citizen advisory boards, commissions, and committees. Scottsdale City Council is responsible for establishing city policies and enacting laws in support of those policies. Council relies on volunteer, citizen-based boards and commissions to research issues and make recommendations in support of the council's mission and goals. The information and recommendations provided by council-appointed advisory boards is a valuable tool in helping council members in their deliberations. Appointments for these positions will be made at a special city council meeting on Tuesday, May 17th. So, we will start with the Board of Adjustments. There is one opening. Daniel Isaac resigned in March, so there is one vacancy and 3 applicants. I am going to shake things up a little bit tonight and start with Mayor Ortega.
Okay, Gary Donahoe.
No additional.
Let's
No
go to
additional.
Okay. Councilman Durham?
No additional.
Mayor Ortega, who did you, oh, I couldn't even, okay, Donahue. Yep, no additional for me as well. So I guess that's good.
No,
oh yeah, we got to keep going.
No additional.
And no
Sorry,
additional.
I know, it's so confusing when it's nominations. Councilwoman Whitehead.
No additional.
I have no additional.
Okay, so Gary Donahoe has been nominated. Thank you. Human Services Commission, there are 3 openings. Jane Hubbard, Emily Riley, and Raul Zubia resigned in April, so there's three vacancies and 3 applicants. I will now entertain nominations for Human Services Commission. Each council member can nominate 3 applicants, and we will start with Councilwoman Littlefield and then just go in line.
Okay, thank you. Patrick Dodds, Mary Jung, and Stuart Turgle.
No additional.
We can be done. Okay, fantastic. Patrick Dodds, Mary Jung, and Stuart Turgle have been nominated. Library Board has 1 opening. Marna McClendon's term expires in May. She is eligible for reappointment and has submitted an application for consideration. There's 1 vacancy and 2 applicants. I will now entertain nominations for the Library Board. Each council member can nominate 1 applicant, and we will start with Councilwoman Janik.
Marna McClendon.
Councilman Durham.
No additional.
I am nominated. No additional for me as well.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
No additional.
Marna McClendon is nominated. McDowell-Sonoran Preserve Commission has 1 opening. Cynthia Wenstrom's term expires in May and is ineligible for reappointment. There's 1 vacancy and 9 applicants. I will now entertain nominations for the McDowell-Sonoran Preserve Commission. Each council member can nominate 1 applicant, and we will start with Councilman Durham.
Robert Halligan.
I am nominating Scott Bartle.
Savannah Enkling.
Mike Savastio.
No additional.
Councilwoman Littlefield.
No additional.
Councilwoman Janik.
No additional.
Rommel, what does that leave us with?
Scott Bartle, Savannah Eckling, Robert Halligan, and Mike Savastio, are nominated.
Fantastic. So moving on to Parks and Rec. Marianne McAllen's term expires in May. She is eligible for reappointment and has submitted an application for consideration. There is 1 vacancy and 10 applicants. I will now entertain nominations for Parks and Rec. Each council member can nominate 1 applicant. I will start with myself, and I nominate Marianne McAllen. Councilwoman Whitehead.
No additional.
Councilwoman Milhaven.
No additional.
Mayor Ortega.
No additional.
Councilwoman Littlefield.
No additional.
Councilwoman Janik.
No additional.
Councilman Durham.
No additional.
Marianne McKellen has been nominated. Okay, it's a lot of pages, sorry. Planning Commission, we have Barry Graham resigned in March. Renee Higgs's term expires in May. She is eligible for reappointment and has submitted an application for consideration. There are 2 vacancies and 14 applicants. I will now entertain nominations for Planning Commission. Each council member can nominate 2 applicants, and I'll start with Councilwoman Whitehead.
Robert Fishman and Anthony Levy.
Councilwoman Milhaven.
Jeff Brand and Renee Higgs.
Mayor Ortega.
Diana Kaminsky, Ed Pieser.
Councilwoman Littlefield.
Lori Coe, Michael Joyner.
Councilwoman Janik.
No additional.
Councilman Durham.
No additional.
I will nominate Jeff Brandt and Renee Higgs, please. They're already nominated? All right, then I'm going to just add Jason Heatland.
Vice Mayor, excuse me.
Did I mess up?
No, just want to, sorry, so I want to make sure I got your selections correctly. So if you can just repeat yours. The 2 you selected?
Jeff Brandt and Jason Heatland.
Thank you.
Do you want to read those off for me?
Sure. So the individuals nominated are Jeff Brand, Lori Coe, Robert Fishman, Jason Heatland, Renee Higgs, Michael Joyner, Diana Kaminsky, Anthony Levy, and Ed Pieser.
Fantastic. Tourism Development Commission. We have 2 openings. One is for a Scottsdale hotelier and one is for an industry rep. This commission has special qualifications as specified in the Scottsdale City Code. The Tourism Development Commission shall consist of representatives of the tourism industry in Scottsdale, including a minimum of 4 Scottsdale hoteliers, 1 member of the Scottsdale Convention and Visitors Bureau, and a balance from elements of the tourism industry. Ken McKenzie resigned in April. He represented a Scottsdale hotelier position. Jean Alspa's term as an industry representative expires in May. She is eligible for reappointment and has submitted an application for consideration. There is 1 Scottsdale hotelier position vacancy and 1 applicant. The applicant is Steve Jung. I will now entertain nominations for Tourism Development Commission's Scottsdale hotelier opening. Each council member can nominate 1 Scottsdale hotelier applicant. And I believe we're up to Councilwoman Milhaven.
Yeah, our package says 1 hotelier and 1 industry rep. So are you doing
Vice Mayor, Councilmember Milhaven, that is correct. We've just broken them down.
Broken them out, okay.
So we're going to vote for this one first, or you're going to make your selections
Okay.
rather, and
Thank
then
you.
the other.
Steve Jung.
Okay, I think Steve Jung has been nominated. And so,
No additional.
do we need to keep going or, okay.
No.
Great. So Tourism Development Commission has 2 openings and we still have 1 in the industry rep. So there is 1 industry position vacancy and 8 applicants. I will now entertain nominations for Tourism Development Commission's industry representative opening. Each council member can nominate 1 industry representative applicant. And I will nominate Jean Alspa. Councilwoman Whitehead.
No addition.
Councilwoman Milhaven.
No additional.
Mayor Ortega.
No additional.
Councilwoman Littlefield.
No additional.
Councilwoman Janik.
No additional.
Councilman Durham.
No additional.
Jean Alspa has been nominated. Transportation Commission has 1 opening. However, no applications have been received at this time. This concludes our nomination process. Individuals nominated will be contacted by city staff with additional information. I want to sincerely thank all of those who've applied to serve on a citizen advisory board or commission. Even if you were not nominated, your application will remain on file for 1 year for consideration at a future date if there are additional vacancies. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other mayor and council items tonight? Okay, hearing, seeing none. I want to clarify something. We started the evening at 4 o'clock with a work study, and that had posted 2 items. We covered 1 regarding the water shortage, And the other one is as posted, deals with the question of purpose or for a sales tax. I just want to mention that kind of openly because we'll be adjourning our meeting right now. But just for discussion, are there any other openings for a work study in the calendar for the 17th? Otherwise, if it's our mood, we would go into that. It's a pretty long subject, and I just want to point that out. The 10th of May is open. That is no council that day. And I just want to pull us openly, or if we want to go ahead. Just for some thoughts, City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, we could definitely look to reschedule the study session. The reason we're back for you this evening is that council asked us to bring this item back, and so we definitely could look at the 17th in a future agenda and make sure it's plausible. It will probably take a little bit of time to go through, and so it might be wise to look to reschedule.
I would agree with that, Councilwoman Whitehead. And
I think we're on a pretty tight timeline because of this tax and having to set up the committee, the Citizens Committee. Don't we do some of our best work at 10 p.m.? I would just assume stay here, but I don't know where the others are, and Councilwoman Janik is on the East Coast, so I'll let other people weigh in. I just assume stay.
Again, what we can do is I will be asking for the motion to adjourn this regular meeting, and then we would reconvene in 7 minutes, and at that point we may decide it's better to reset that. Well, you want to just go right into it? Okay. Well, let me go ahead and ask for a motion to adjourn our regular meeting. Move second. Please register your vote. Okay. So we are adjourned with our regular meeting. Now, it's not a question of for the record, I will reconvene our work study in 5 minutes. I call the May 3rd, 2022 work study session reconvened. We did take a recess, and for the record, all council members are present, and Councilwoman Janik is remote, and also the charter officers are present. So we're able to conduct this work study. As posted, the question had to do with a presentation about the expiration of the preserve tax, and which would be in 2025. However, I am open to a motion to table this perhaps table is not the word, but we could postpone or this until the next work study. And do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue it to the next work study. I think you said 1 to 2 weeks. Is that what we're thinking?
Yes, correct. We look like we can handle it on May 17th.
And my apologies to Corey and Bill.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Again, we'll be able to have the full presentation and without a break in a partial discussion, deliberation. Please register your vote. We have a motion and a second.
My vote's yes. Councilwoman Janik.
Thank you. Thank you. We are unanimous. Therefore, at this point, we are concluded with the work study, and I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Good night.